Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this what if story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴 on Wattpad. Now let's start. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 stop. A young green-haired boy tells his friend, who had already gotten his quirk. Shut up, Deku. I do what I want, this is my quirk, not yours. The ash blonde replied, small explosions popping in the palms of his hands. A younger child, around the age of 3, puts his hands up defensively as 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 walks up to him, extremely intimidating. The kid also has his quirk, and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 said it looked freaky, being a mutant-type quirk. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 pulled on the younger's tail, the named boy squeaking in surprise. Izuku suddenly felt lightheaded, and he looked fairly sick. 𝐀𝐮𝐿, please. He calls out, leaning on a tree as he holds his head, feeling quite nauseous. 𝐀𝐮𝐿 glances towards him, and ignores him a moment later. Katsuki, please. He's not as old as us. Izuku repeats, not using the silly nickname his friend had. Katsuki rolls his eyes and rounds up on Izuku. Oh, shut up. You don't even have your quirk yet, and you look sick as hell. You're so weak, Deku. Izuku felt himself be harshly shoved, and his hands started to feel tingly. To his surprise, he landed on a large, fluffy object which was big enough to fit his entire class on. Izuku sat down on it, feeling strangely comfortable as Katsuki gasped. He felt himself barf up his lunch on the side, but he was fine with it. That's a cloud. Your quirk is dash, Katsuki spluttered, immediately knowing it was the greenette's quirk. Izuku smiled at him. Hop on 𝐀𝐮𝐿, it's fluffy. He stutters, more clouds forming over his arms. Katsuki grins at him and does as told. They zoomed around the park, Izuku apologizing about Katsuki's behavior to the kid beforehand. The greenette found it natural and very easy to use his quirk to his surprise, and more than one kid wanted to get on it too. His fun was short-lasting though when he and Katsuki were picked up. Izuku looked over and saw his mum, a nervous look across her face. Hey brat. Come on, we're walking. Auntie Mitsuki. Izuku directed the cloud over to them, both being the only ones on it. His mother looked shocked. Oboro. She mumbles, blinking twice before Mitsuki snapped her out of whatever trance she was in. Inko smiles at the pair, and Mitsuki grinned at Izuku's newly found quirk. Congratulations on getting your quirk, Izuku. Inko sighs, the grin still on her face. You know, your uncle had the exact same quirk. Let's just hope you don't go to class NDE with only a cloud on like he did anytime soon. Izuku and Katsuki giggle. No way, mama. I won't be bad. You better not be, mister. Izuku glanced around the examination room, a pen at his side as the examinees started to hand in their test papers. He could faintly see present Mike's spare looks at him, which he could only assume was just a mistake. Katsuki sat somewhere at the front of the room, nowhere near Izuku, so he couldn't chat while he waited for everybody to check through their test and hand it in. Through the years of having his quirk, Izuku found out he got nauseous if he used his quirk, but his mother quickly supplied an answer. Since his quirk was air-based, which is pretty rare dash, the air he breathes in makes him get sick because his body is now 60% of modified air and 10% water. He was given some sort of band-aid-like strips to put on his face, and he usually slapped them either over his nose or on his cheek. So far, most of the examinees have finished, Izuku being one of the first few done. He ran a hand through his light green hair, which he dyed blue in some places after finding out what happened to his uncle, who he had inherited his quirk from. Izuku heard he even got some habits Oboro left behind, which made him smile. Soon enough, after a certain amount of time, everybody was directed to the auditorium and got given a seat to sit at. Izuku had gotten a seat next to Katsuki to his pleasure, and skimmed through the pamphlet he had gotten. Nobody else seemed to do so, murmuring to their friend groups on what they think they'll need to do. Some people thought it was fighting a teacher, while others thought it was some type of rescue-based one. The students were quickly hushed as the presentation started. Can I get a yeah? Izuku smirked. Yeah. He yells back, earning a whack on the head from Katsuki. "Kakin please dash," he giggles. He looked back at Present Mike, who grinned even wider than how he usually did. Now that's a kid who likes fun before battle. Then the presentation went on, and Izuku instantly saw a flaw and raised his hand. "What's wrong, kid? Something I forgot?" Present Mike asked, easily heard even when not yelling. "Yeah, I see a few flaws in this whole test actually, mind if I voice them?" The blonde shrugged. "I'm fine with it, what do you want to address, kiddo?" Izuku cleared his throat. "Well, this is irrational, because some people want to become rescue heroes or medical-based ones, and may not have a good quirk for battle because they plan to stay on the sidelines. Not to mention mental kind of quirks, which only work on let's say humans and such, or like mine which is physical and our brute strength won't work on solid iron. It's pretty stupid if you're only looking for fighters. Oh, and you forgot about the last robot." Present Mike stared at the boy, before clearing his throat. "Well, okay, what about those whose quirks were somewhat mentioned? Stay behind, we can figure out another test for you all. And thanks for addressing the robot I forgot. The 0-pointer is a large robot I'd suggest you try and avoid, because you won't get any points anyways." Izuku clutched his bow staff, fairly nervous about what he'd need to do instead. After the majority of the examinees left, Present Mike walked off stage and called the remaining over to get closer. Izuku sat down almost directly in front of him. "Alright, is anyone aiming to be a fighting type of hero?" Izuku was one of the only two who put their hand up. Mike sighed. "Alright, you're both either going to be going against one of the teachers, either Snipe, Midnight, or Ectoplasm. Anyone who's aiming to be a rescue hero will go with 13, and they'll assess you on what you already know by going to the USJ with them. The rest of you who I assume are to be medical-based heroes will go with Recovery Girl. You'll all be given points for what you do right. They'll be going on right after the other test." The small group listened closely, and Izuku was sure he'd seen a girl almost barf from excitement. He glanced around and saw Midnight at the side of the room. In the meantime, while they waited, Izuku had struck up a conversation with two others, named Hitoshi Shinso and Achiko Uraraka. "Yeah, my quirk is gravity-based. I make stuff lose weight and mostly float." Achiko smiles. "Do you get any sickness from it?" Izuku asks. The brunette nods, stopping when Izuku passes her STRP of what he usually has on. "Band-Aid." Izuku shook his head. "Nope, put it on, it stops any sickness and nausea from our kind of quirks. They are hard to find, so I'll be probably giving you a packet when I see you next. You can only have one on for the span of a week, it's waterproof." He explains. Shinso stared at him. "What is your quirk anyways? We told you ours." Izuku suddenly realizes they don't know his quirk yet. "Oh dash. My quirk is cloud. I take the moisture in the air and make a cloud as big or as small as I want. They're really soft but you can actually sit on it like a chair and stuff." Izuku waved his hand and a fairly large cloud. "Phew." He smirks, grabbing his bow staff. "You can also do this." He slams the staff down on it, and it fogged the area, but the majority was amused on how he decided to demonstrate his quirk. Izuku's eyes flashed white as he made all of it turn into separate clouds. He flopped down on one, to the amusement of Achiko, who had placed the over her nose. The laughter was cut short when Present Mike called him and Shinso over for their test. "You two are free to take any items, if it helps. Greenie, you're going against Midnight, Mini Aizawa you're going against Snipe." The two nod, following Present Mike to their opponents. He walked away once the two teens were led to two different rooms, being separated by a door each. The two pros turned to the teenagers. "Alright, this will be like a game, we're going to have pads spread across our body, which are usually used for licensing exams. You won't know which is which, but they'll have different points programmed in them. Since this will be way harder than fighting robots, you both will have the points 6, 9, and 11 instead of 1, 2, and 3. In the middle of the battle, the wall will open and our fights will clash together and you can hit each other's assigned teacher for points, understand?" The two unnatural-haired boys nod. "Wait, you can also hit them more than once, and there will be this one which takes your score down by 20. Be careful." Snipe warns as he leads Shinso to the other room. Midnight stares at him for a moment before getting ready to fight. As the start bell rang, Izuku formed a large cloud and did his illusion trick which he performed in the auditorium. As the teachers were talking, they didn't say they needed something to hit the pads with, so Izuku assumed they could use anything. He saw Midnight glance around nervously before she tripped from Izuku tapping a pad with his bow staff a little too hard. The fog cleared up and Midnight finally used her quirk, which was a mistake. It was formed into another cloud and Izuku set it over her head, which would just make her sleep for a tiny bit, nothing more. It took 5 minutes before Midnight woke up to being poked, and Izuku assumed his points were high in the 40s at least. Then the fight went on. Izuku dodged her for most of it, making a cloud that would block out her quirk over his nose and mouth so he could breathe freely. After a moment of dodging each other's attacks, the wall came down, and Izuku saw 𝐶𝐻𝐿 surprisingly sitting down on the floor, just letting himself get poked. He turned back to his own fight, elbowing Midnight in the stomach just before the bell rang again to end the battle. The fight stopped and Midnight gasped for breath before walking off, followed by 𝐶𝐻𝐿 and the two teens. ― and him had walked to the entrance with their bags, saying goodbye once Katsuki and Izuku had to go. Izuku tore off the 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻 over his nose and barfed into a nearby bin. I should have put another on this morning dash. He gasped before barfing again. Edited on the first day of school, Izuku turned up 1 minute before the bell, so he had to rush to class. He had ended up passing with 81 points, which would be around 40 if he took the original test. As he finally got to class, he got chewed out a bit for being late by a guy with navy blue-black hair. He mostly ignored him, a bit ruffled and tired from missing his alarm he never woke up to. He just sat down at his desk with a tired expression, laying his head down. He heard the door slide open again, and he heard somebody walk in. The class quieted, but Izuku couldn't be bothered to see who just walked in until they had introduced themselves. He slowly held his head up to look. Already quiet. What a rational bunch you are. Izuku could just sense a bit of sarcasm. Anyhow, my name is Shoyuta Aizawa, and I will be your homeroom teacher. The greenette saw his sensei's eyes linger on him for a moment. I won't tolerate coming late or falling asleep in class. He looked a tiny bit pained to say that, but Izuku ignored that fact. Now get up and change. Go to the field behind the school, I'll meet you there. You have 5 minutes. The ravenet walked out, a bright yellow sleeping bag tucked neatly under his arm. Izuku rubbed his eyes for a moment, before getting up and walking out. He was almost immediately followed by everyone else. He was the first to get to the field, but he was a bit slow compared to how fast he usually was. The next to come was one of the girls with long green hair and large eyes. More followed after her, barely coming in time. All right, before any of you address the problem, you are in my class, and I can make you skip unnecessary events and assemblies. Instead, we are doing an assessment test, a quirk assessment test, and whoever comes last will be expelled. The black-haired teacher turned to Bakugo. Bakugo, what was your furthest throw in middle school quirkless? 65 meters. Bakugo answers, taking the ball he was offered. Aizawa explained a bit more on what they were doing, so once asked, the blonde threw the ball as far as he could using his quirk as creatively as he could make it. Aizawa held up a screen, showing the results. 805 meters, not bad. He comments, putting it back in his pocket. Izuku calls Bakugo back to his spot as Aizawa explains what they were going to do, like the 30-meter dash, grip strength, and so on. The 30-meter dash was a breeze for Izuku, literally. It had gotten fairly windy before his turn, and once he sat on his cloud somehow with a pack of chips he ate during his turn dash, the wind had blown his cloud to the finish line, only a few milliseconds after Ida's time. For grip strength, like usual, he got over average. Since his quirk wasn't an actual battle-based one, he had to start training his physical body around middle school. He started with simple things like lifting weights and running every morning since he was barely 9 when he started. He gained a whole lot of muscle by that. Next was easy, it was a stamina test. The events continued, Izuku usually falling in the top 6. The only thing he needed to get really creative for was the ball throw, which was hard because of his quirk. He caught the ball as it was thrown to him, summoning a cloud to use as he stepped in the circle. He let his mind wander for a moment before deciding he could boost the ball with a small cloud. Cloud formed around his fingers, which made the ball a bit lighter for Izuku due to a cloud holding most of the weight. He stepped back a bit before throwing, using the cloud to boost the ball up and further. He heard a beep and looked at his sensei for his score. As expected from your Quirk, you didn't do as well as the others. Aizawa sensei held up the screen, showing the score of 695 meters. He ended up in 10th place for that though, so he was fine with it. After a while, Aizawa sensei had written down the results, and the class passed the sheet around to see their scores. Izuku scans through the paper, grinning when he sees the score he'd gotten. 7th. He whispers to himself as he passes the sheet to Ochiko. Some girl named Toru Hagakure ended up last, but Izuku assumed it's because her quirk didn't really help. Being just invisible isn't as useful as the other quirks. Alright, Hagakure, go to the office and ask to be sent to general education. I'm not expelling you from the school, just the hero course. The black-haired teacher announces as the invisible girl sighs in disappointment. As the teen left, the rest of the class was ordered to get back in the classroom after changing for their timetable. Izuku sighs, wondering what the school has to surprise them next. Izuku stared up at the tall figure of All Might, nervously fidgeting with a small cloud in his hand as everybody awaited an explanation of this particular exercise. So far, All Might barged into their classroom, got them to get in their hero costumes, and told them they're doing battle training, that's it. The blonde started to talk, doing what everybody had thought he should have done in the beginning, and started to actually explain. All Izuku picked up from the stuttering mess was that they were having a villain and hero team. Heroes would try to get to a bomb, and the villains would protect it. If you both got caught, then game over. If the bomb is touched by a hero team, then heroes win. Then, All Might started to draw lots to make the teams. Izuku wasn't particularly pleased with who he ended up with, but he was fine with it. He got paired with Mina Ishido, whose quirk and personality wouldn't go well with his. They got to be Team A, and they went against Team D, who are Ijiro Kirishima and Denki Kaminari. They weren't a good pair-up either, so it was hard for both teams to come up with a plan. Izuku and Mina got to be the villain team, and Izuku was given the responsibility to hide the bomb. Ishido, stop talking. We won't get anywhere if you ramble about nonsense. Izuku groans, frustrated. Oh, sorry Midoriya. Got distracted. Mina grins sheepishly. It's fine. Anyways, I got a plan. I'll use a cloud to hide the bomb in the basement. The hero team wouldn't know there's a basement because there's certain areas they weren't allowed to see on the map. Mina nods, agreeing to the plan. Oh, nice thinking, this will be so easy. As long as we both don't get captured, then we're fine. Izuku grins nervously. Sorry to burst your bubble, but I may get nauseous and throw up. I couldn't find the rest of the strips I put over my nose. Mina's grin falters for a moment. She was about to say words of encouragement when the bell warning them that the time is almost over had decided to ring. Izuku and Mina, with the help of both Acid and Cloud, had gotten the bomb to the basement. Mina had suggested she covers the whole floor and Izuku could use a cloud to avoid it. The Greenette reluctantly had agreed. Once the round had started, Hell had also. The villain team had heard a shriek from the front, which Izuku could assume they met the Acid waiting for them. He quickly pulled Mina up whenever he saw electricity was about to hit her, or just covered her feet in clouds so she wouldn't be affected, which he ended up doing just before they parted to capture the hero team. Izuku had run into Denki first, which was lucky for him. Ejiro wouldn't stand a chance against Mina. The acid would burn his skin, and due to that Mina could circle him while staying at a reasonable distance. Izuku was good with Denki because the electricity couldn't affect him if he defended himself with his cloud, since it could store the electricity, because it's a quirk and is therefore different to an actual cloud. Denki fired lightning out, knowing it was only them there. Izuku blocked it with his cloud, barely ignoring the upcoming nausea. He easily circled around Denki, using his bow staff to trip the blonde up a bit. He quickly stole the blonde's capture tape from his hands and started to wrap the male up in it, making Denki unable to move. After making sure Denki was properly tied, he formed clouds around his feet and started to walk over Acid to go find the other two, to see how Mina was doing and to see if the redhead had found anything yet. Before he could get anywhere close, a booming voice was heard over the speakers. 𝐻𝐿 has been captured by the heroes. Denki Kaminari has been captured by the villains. He silently cusses, having a feeling Mina had slipped up somehow. Izuku started to skid across the acid, trying to find the redhead that had captured his classmate. He skied to the basement, only to find Kirishima thinking of a way to get to the bomb. Hello. He grins, wrapping the redhead up in capture tape. The mentioned team groans. DMN. The villain team wins. Edited, today, we'll be electing the class presidents and representative. Aizawa sensei informs, staring at his class with a blank expression sewn on his face. I don't care how you do it, just have it done before next PRD. The black-haired teacher walked over to his desk and sat down as the class erupted with students wanting to be class president or representative. The class presidents do not represent the class. That's something that has been changed the year before. There would be a class president, vice president, and representative. The first two would manage the class, set rules, and just manage anything the teacher isn't needed for. The representative would just show an example about the class, and go to small meetings with the class presidents for stuff like the class setup. Izuku rolls his eyes at his peers, not really wanting the positions. If he did get elected though, he'd only tolerate representative, because he doesn't like being noticed more than he should be. Representative is just when people know how the majority of the class would be close to acting like, and the class president just gives you more attention because of the position, and knowing the person is responsible and probably would be a great pro-hero. Izuku glances at Tenya, who was trying to silence everyone. I love yelling. A student laughs, immediately silenced by Izuku shoving a cloud in their mouth. They calmed down, and stayed like that even when Izuku made it disappear. Izuku massages his temples, letting out a glad groan once Tenya managed to get the class to hush. Tenya proposes an election using common democracy, and is immediately agreed by the majority of the class. Momo decided to make two, small, separate boxes, one for president and other for representative. She places them on Aoyama's and Mina's desks, with a hole to put in the paper. Everybody had gotten paper and a pen, and wrote down their vote. The papers had been mostly shoved in the box in an attempt to make the election go faster. Aoyama had to tally up the votes for class president, while Mina did class republic. Alright, the class presidents shall be Momo Yaoyorozu for vice, and Tenya Ida for president. Izuku saw a pout on Mina's face. Izuku honestly thought they only voted Tenya because they could easily get homework answers from him, because he'd probably take the role seriously. The class rep is Izuku Midoriya. Mina announces with a clap. Izuku lets out a sigh. Even if he'd settle on it, he doesn't say he likes being elected for it. He honestly thought he should have said he didn't want the role. The following lunch, the group was chatting about it minus Uraraka, who had sat with other girls with Tenya and Izuku not really glad with their position. They both didn't want it, so it's fairly understandable. I don't think I'm fit for the role, maybe I should wait a year. Tenya mumbles. The thing I hate is the attention class rep will give me. Izuku sighs. I'm probably going to hand it over to somebody. He adds on. Tensei, who is visiting the school and wanted to meet his brother's friends, lets out a small chuckle. Make sure you say an actual reason for it instead of saying, oh, I just don't want it, they can take my place, he informs. It'll make you seem like a JRK who can't take the time in their life to do extracurricular and such. It's coming from experience. Izuku nods. I guess. I hate unnecessary attention. Is that a reason? Tensei shrugs. I guess it could be. Who'll you give the position to? Probably Azui. I'll probably give the position of class president to Achiko. She's nice. Tenya smiles. Izuku was about to reply when some sort of alarm went off. Tensei stood up, the speed rivaling how fast his quirk makes him. You all gotta go with the rest, security had been breached. I'm trusting you all to stay calm and collected. He sped off, throwing on his helmet he had brung. The group stood up, quickly scoffing down a bit more of their food, before running with the rest of the students. The hallway clogged, and everybody was running to the exit in a panic. Izuku felt somebody tap his shoulder. Izuku, I need help. He saw Achiko. The rest of the group ran off, knowing Izuku would meet up with them again. I need you to make a cloud and get me to the sign up there. Izuku nods, a bit confused as she points at a sign. It's the press, not a villain. Izuku did as asked, using his clouds to float her to the sign. Hachiko let out a shaky breath, holding onto the bars over the sign to stay in the right place. Hey! Calm down. She yells out, making a few students jump. It's just the press. The students quieted down, letting Hachiko just talk normally. The press just got in. Let's just go back to our classes normally. I'm sure our senseis won't mind us eating there. She says, grinning when they all did so. She felt nervous as she was brung down. Unlike the other girls, Hachiko wore leggings under her skirt, so she didn't worry about perverts when she levitated. She felt herself calm down from her nervous state and grinned. Thanks, Izuku. She grins, running over. I think I'd have puked if you weren't the one to do that. Izuku smiles. It's no problem. Their peers started to drag them back to class, and once possible, Tenya and Izuku got out of being class rep and president. I don't really like unnecessary attention, so I'm going to give class rep over to Azui. Tenya got sick but told me to give class president over to Hachiko Uraraka. The two given the positions grin wide. Hachiko skips up to the front of the class next to Momo as Izuku sits down in his seat. Izuku ignores their declarations and tunes the class out, a confused look in his eyes. As Izuku walked home, he could only think of what kind of trick his eyes were playing on him earlier. Once Hachiko was up at the sign, Izuku felt as if something was bothering him, but he didn't know what. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 had a bad feeling all morning. First he mistook that feeling for being nervous about the USJ attack he was performing today with a group of criminals and their leader, Shigaraki Tamura. Although he tried to ignore it, he found it hard to. As the time drew nearer for the raid, he felt his mist flicker from evaporating to back to normal again. As he prepared the attack, he felt a burn on his arm, just to see his mist trying to recover part of his arm. Olive-toned skin was barely seen through it after a moment. He let out a small sigh and got back to work. A few low-level thugs had come early and started to demand some drinks. The cyan-haired leader emerged from the doorway after a while of working, hair as messy as always, and a hand held over his face like some sort of mask. There were old scars littering his neck, and had obviously been scratching it again. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 made a mental note to tell Shigaraki to stop after the attack. Soon enough, the time had come, and the Mist Man had to collect all the criminals and transport the groups to the unforeseen simulation joint. A portal flickered, and he kept it open for as long as possible as he and Shigaraki Tamura walked through it. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, you better not mess this up. Tamura hisses with a glare. He let out a small chuckle before looking up at the class and pro-heroes up near the door. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 did his best to make as much mist as he could and transported himself over, giving the students no way to escape. Hello there, heroes, students. We are the League of Villains. And we are here to destroy your pride by killing All Might. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 honestly thought that was a horrible thing to do, saying their intentions right when they arrived, but he didn't comment on it as he started transporting students to different places. Oh goodness, this was going to be tiring. Izuku, despite expecting a lot from getting accepted into UE, didn't expect a villain group to attack them when they were only in the first week. 13. Protect the students, I'm going to fight. Izuku gasped at his sensei's words. But sensei, even if you can handle yourself, and you're not a one-trick pony, you are clearly going to have major injuries after you start getting tired. Your eyes probably can't take such a large group either. Izuku rambles, summoning clouds in his hands. Sure, Midoriya, I'll be fine, just make sure your classmates will be alright, don't worry about me. Izuku could have sworn he was going to say another name, but didn't get time to ask about it as his sensei jumps into action, his gray capture scarf floating around him as he activates his quirk. Chako. Tenya. We have good quirks for this situation. You can go run outside and inform the pros in UE. Chako and I have the right quirks for certain things, and we'll be good here helping our class. Hachiko, from beside Izuku, nods. Come on, Tenya. You can do it. She smiles, nudging Izuku a bit. The greenette grins, increasing the size of the clouds in his hands. He sent them off, making a small archway the dark-haired teen could fit through. Go. Achiko cheers. Izuku groans. If only 𝗀𝐿 got it into Class A instead of B. Glancing around, he notices what the purple-haired teen could do with his quirk in this situation, but quickly brought his mind away from it as the clouds he formed started going gray. The mist the unknown man produced lightened in color for a moment before the archway collapsed into thin air. Tenya had made it through just in time and kicked open the locked door. He sprinted out the building with his engines producing smoke and eventually fire. Izuku turned back to the mist villain, only to come face to face with a portal. It seemed to be rejecting him, and the green net had been bouncing off it for the past few seconds. That was until somebody got thrown at him, forcing him through the warp gate. Before the duo could be submerged in the water, Izuku had shifted in the right position and waved his hands a bit. A soft, large cloud appeared under them, and Izuku got to see who was thrown into him. "Are you okay?" Yes, I'm fine. Thank you, Midoriya." "No problem, Yaoyorozu. Was anybody else thrown into the warp gate?" The black-haired female nods. "Yes. Jiru, if I'm not mistaken. But where is she?" Izuku glances around, hearing a squeak. His eyes widen and he forms a cloud underwater. A risky move, as it works as a sponge and can be harder to use. He pulls out a soaking wet Jiru and quickly discarded the cloud she was on after putting her on another. "My clouds are stiff and are hard to break, so it's better we stay on here instead of that ship. Those criminals might split it or something after too long, they seem impatient." The two girls nod. "On the other hand, after way too long I might start feeling a bit sick, so we gotta do this fast. How can we get past them?" Momo bit her lip for a moment. "Let's say our quirks first, it could come in handy. Mine is creation. As long as I know the materials and such about the object I intend to create, then I can make it using open skin," she explains, followed by Kyoka. "Mine is earphone jack. It's great for hearing small noises and such, but noises that are too loud can hurt my ears. I can also use my heartbeat as a maximized noise to temporarily paralyze somebody or a group of people. Midoriya, can you explain yours a bit more?" Izuku nods. "Mine is cloud. Using my quirk I can make different shaped clouds from all the moisture in the air. The volume makes it okay to sit on and such, but my quirk is great at diversions and such, not just easy transport. I have something I usually use, and it's used as some sort of smoke screen but clouds. Using my bow staff it's easier though because there will be fog lingering around." The two girls nod and get to planning. "Midoriya, you said something about a smoke screen, right? Maybe, using your clouds and some smoke bombs we can fog out the area and make the water all misty. The criminals will try to find us. Then, Jiru, you can use your hearing to locate them. Midoriya has a weapon, and you can knock them out and I'll tie them up," Momo explains with a grin. Izuku nods. "Let's put one or two in my clouds too." Then they got to work. Izuku made up a fairly large cloud, making the volume a bit weaker so smoke bombs could be put in them. Izuku had also suggested flash bombs so the villains would be temporarily blinded. It had come to having one of each in that cloud. Grabbing his staff from its holster on his back, Izuku set the girls on the ship and took it out, using his strength to both activate the bombs and separate the clouds at the same time. The flash bomb went off, and the criminals were seen hiding their eyes as Momo took the opportunity to put smoke bombs in the water, which went off at contact. The one in one of the clouds went off too and smoked out the area. "Jiru, come on," Izuku whispers, pulling her on a cloud he stood on. The female led Izuku around, just about knocking all the thugs out as all the smoke and clouds faded. The criminals were set to the side, tied in some sort of alloy scarf their sensei had. The trio of students crouched close to the plaza, watching their sensei fight for a moment before two started moving to get away. Kyoka and Momo got back up to where their class was starting to meet, reluctantly leaving Izuku to watch the fight over. The greenette was about to jump in, as his sensei didn't notice the black, bird-like creature started to shift around, ready to pounce. He was stopped by the mist villain, who had transported over to the assumed leader of the attack. Izuku gulped and held onto his staff tight, having no time to attack as the mist started to close in on him. The mist flickered, and it gave Izuku a chance to escape. He took it and stood up outside the mist, forming a small, hard cloud to throw at the villain using his staff like a baseball. To his surprise, it just vanished, and did it multiple times before giving up on it. He used his staff to whack the villain, sending him back a bit before the cyan-haired villain called on him. Midoriya, go. Izuku glanced at his teacher, horrified at the sight. His arms had obviously broken, and there was blood starting to form from his nose. Izuku shook his head. No. A true hero would sacrifice themselves and not hesitate to do the right thing. I won't stand there and watch. Izuku lunged at the Nomu, spinning his staff a few times. He had gotten the leader in the stomach to his pleasure, and had smacked the open brain with the wood, jumping on the monster. It sent them both flying, surprisingly. Midoriya, no. I won't allow you to risk your life. His sensei shouts, pulling himself up to his feet to run over immediately after. Keep it like that until you graduate, you problem child. I don't want a student dying on me. Izuku shook his head. I'll be careful. Just let me help you, sensei. Please. He saw his sensei's eyes widen for a moment through those yellow-colored goggles. Izuku pulled his on to prevent his eyes from getting hurt that much. He had used his uncle's hero suit design and modified it, so it would be more. Izuku. He kept the jacket idea but made it thinner and such. A red utility belt matched his shoes, and he wore black briefs with a blue shirt. His goggles would usually rest on his forehead with his hair covering most of it. Fine, don't get yourself hurt. Sensei Aizawa reluctantly replies, wrapping his capture weapon around the Nomu. He launched himself towards it and kicked the unnatural being in the chest while Izuku decided to aim for the brain again. Sensei, if you can distract it, I can put it out of order. The Ravenet nods at his student's words, keeping the creature busy as his student climbed it. Izuku waved his hand for a moment, and the creature stopped for a second. He had successfully put clouds under the brain, all he needed to do was pull it out enough that it can't function. He saw his sensei stare for a moment as the Nomu's brain got pulled out of its place, making the creature stop what it was doing and fall to its knees. Aizawa-sensei stared at the creature before turning to the cyan-haired villain. No. That thing was supposed to be able to defeat All Might. This isn't fair. You NPCs are ruining my plans. It's not FAI-, the villain exclaims, only to be cut off by a booming voice. I am here. It had been a disaster. All Might had another Nomu sent after him once he came in, and had completely forgotten Izuku was close by. The Greenette had been given multiple injuries, and it was surprising he wasn't in complete bed rest. Currently, Izuku is laying down in his room, a broken arm laying over his stomach while his cast-covered legs were laying on 2 pillows. He ended up with 2 broken ribs and a concussion too, but having a lot of stamina left, Recovery Girl took care of most of the healing. A fair amount of teachers were worried, since all the injuries weren't exactly minor. At first, he was going to go to a hospital, but he ended up just being laid down in the ambulance. He wasn't sure who refused to let him go to a hospital, but it was one of the pros lurking around. Izuku. Somebody is here to see you. Inko calls form behind his door. Izuku could hear the worry in her voice. Let them in, Mom. Izuku smiles. He heard a click, and the door opened. A long-haired blonde walked in, and Izuku could only assume Iz was present. Mike. The skin tone matched up, the hair length, and he was sure Mix's eye color is green. Inko left, not wanting to make anything awkward. Hey Midoriya, I'm here for you. Some of us teachers were worried and wanted somebody to check up on you, so I volunteered. Izuku nods. Is there anything I should know about for school? I can't do anything with these casts on. The blonde nods. Yeah, the sports festival is on in a week. It's up to you to participate or not. If you still want to attend but not participate, you're free to commentate with me and Aizawa. We could use your analysis skills we've heard of. Izuku thought for a moment. But isn't there stuff like internships after though? How will I get any requests? Yes. Oh, a fair few pros have heard of how you fight and such, and I know you already have 10 waiting for you. Izuku stared for a moment. And nods. Sure then, I'll skip out on the festival. I don't think it's good for me to participate anyways. I might hurt myself even more. Mike grins. Great. Now, while I'm here, do you mind if I ask you a few questions for the police? Sure, 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴. Izuku stares down at the crowd below, shaking a little bit at his decision to help. He heard a chuckle behind him and got lightly ousted into his seat. Nervous? Don't be, it's just a crowd of people. They'll appreciate your help, I bet. You're better at explaining quirks. Your mother told us at some point when you were on bedrest. Hizashi admits, plopping down in his seat. Izuku saw his sensei sit on his right, making Izuku be sat in the middle. He saw the business course students help bring people to their seats down below, while others helped with snacks and such while waiting for the sports festival to start. Inside the room he sat in, there were multiple buttons and microphones, as well as a timer. We were late, but that's okay. We still have 10 minutes to set everything up. Hizashi mumbles, starting to set some stuff up. He passes over a mic to Izuku and 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴, Izuku being given one that can clip behind his ear. We need you to explain their quirks at certain times from what you see, so you need to be ready and not just snatch a mic from somewhere. Hizashi laughs. Announce at least the first 10 first round, no more. Alright, ready? Show Midoriya. The two nod, and Hizashi breathed in and got ready to yell. Izuku scooted a bit closer to 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴 for that. Hey listeners! Welcome to UI's annual sports festival, where students in different courses will show off their quirks and abilities with combat, logic, and more. This time I got two special guests to help with commentating. Class, one is homeroom teacher 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴, and one of his own students, Midoriya Izuku. They hear loud cheers from the crowd, and Izuku finally decides to clip on the microphone, ready for the first event. Onto the classes. First up is the class who got through a villain attack classing. Izuku saw his classmates enter the field. With their amazing quirks and skills, comes in Class B. 20 students enter behind Izuku's class. Then onto the general classes. With their plainness and determination, comes Class C, D, and E. Hizashi announces, stopping for a moment for a gasp of breath as 3 classes enter to field. He announces a few more classes, excluding business students, before ending. Now, finally, with their smarts and longing to help, comes the support classes, Classes I and H. Another 2 classes enter, and once in place, Midnight starts talking. Alright students. Before we start our festival, we need a quick speech from the top hero course student, Katsuki Bakugo. Izuku winces. Kaken, don't do it, stick to what we made up. He thought. Katsuki walks up to the microphone setup and starts talking. Look, I'm not here to play around. I expect a challenge. Don't disappoint me. Izuku sighs at his friend's words. Not as bad as it could be. Alright, thank you. Now, let's spin the wheel to determine the first event. Midnight turned to a wheel behind her and spun it. After a moment, it stopped on a section. Obstacle race. In this, our first-year students will be running around the stadium and will be going through each of the 3 obstacles. She poorly explains. The students got ready for a minute, then the horn rung out through the stadium. Everybody started running, shoving each other through the tunnel. The first to come out was Shudo Todoroki, who had froze most people into place. 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴 nudged Izuku. Shudo Todoroki, quirk, half and half. His quirk allows him to produce ice from one side of his body and fire on his other. His fighting style includes little effort although he's strong, and from what I've seen he tends to avoid using his fire unless it's to melt his ice. Izuku explains, looking over a bit to see the screen easier as the crowd oat. The camera had zoomed close to Shudo's face, and he assumed it would do that to everyone he analyzes. Shitty half and half BE was heard even through the walls. Explosions popped and soon enough Izuku saw Katsuki propelling himself through the air using his explosions. Katsuki Bakugo. Quirk. Explosion. Using his nitroglycerin sweat, he is able to make explosions in the palms of his hands which can do multiple things. Depending on how sweaty he is how much of an explosion he can create. Todoroki was seen freezing 2 0-pointers on an angle. The robots have appeared as Izuku was explaining. 2 students, one with red hair and another with silver, attempted to follow the second and third place contestants, but then the robots fell on them. Izuku had seen enough to know the other's quirk. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Quirk. Hardening. His quirk allows him to harden parts of his body the strength of bricks and concrete, although like that he can chip. Izuku announces as Kirishima punches through the robot, followed by the other. He looked through the student's files he was given for a second. 𝗧𝗜𝗧𝗟𝗘. Quirk. Iron. His quirk allows himself to make himself as hard as steel and more, but he does have a few major weaknesses that can be easily figured out, especially against people with 𝐶 quirks. 𝗀𝗟𝗘 pat Izuku's shoulder with a small smile Izuku hadn't seen his teacher ever give. He seemed a bit proud. The greenette decided to turn back to the course as Mike announced the next obstacle. He saw a familiar girl float up, with a green-haired female following her. Achiko Uraraka. Quirk, zero gravity. She can make whatever she touches with all 5 fingers weightless, and even float using the pads on her fingers. To stop the effect, all she has to do is press her fingers together and say, release. Izuku's eyes turned to the other one. 𝗬𝗓𝐴𝐺𝐸. Quirk, frog. She has all the abilities as a frog, although there is no specific one, so she can seem unpredictable. She doesn't hesitate and has good combat abilities using her frog abilities from what I've seen. There was a sudden trail of smoke, and Izuku could just about catch the sight of a support student. 𝐴𝐻ATSUM. She can see extremely far distances with her eyes only, and although not having a combat quirk, her intelligence makes up for it. Being in a support class, it's clearly seen now. There was a dash of blue which headed for the second obstacle. 𝗀𝗟𝗧𝗟𝗘. Quirk, engine. Using the engines in his calves, he can go up to race car speeds just by running. It's impressive, and because of that he learned how to not rely on his quirk anyways. Be careful fighting him. Izuku decided that was enough and sat back, watching the rest of the first event. The last obstacle soon came, and Hizashi started to speak again. Last obstacle, landmines. They don't hurt, but you may need a change of clothes after they blast you. Izuku silently snorts at that comment. Know from experience. 𝗀𝗟𝗘 comments, making sure he was leaning into a mic for that. Hizashi spluttered random words and eventually just ignored his comment as Izuku giggled. In first place, Ejiro Kirishima. Second place, Katsuki Bakugo. And third is, Shuto Todoroki. Tough luck. Hizashi says through his microphone. Izuku just started wondering why he was even given one. Now while the students have a small rest, we have a break for 5 minutes. Take this time to get food, talk and more. Hizashi turned off the microphones and turned to Izuku. You can go join in on the mini-games if you want. Midnight is starting them down on the field. Izuku thought for a moment and shook his head. No thanks, I'm not that good at mini-games, he replies, taking out his notebook he brought with him. And I need to update this. He grabbed a pen and turned to a page, only noticing the outside world when a set of headphones were put on. He assumed they were present mix. There aren't any other set around and it was noise cancelling. He glanced up and saw the 2 teachers talking, with his sensei surprisingly leading it. Hizashi frowned, and Izuku attempted to try reading their lips. He couldn't pick up on much, but tried to put the words together. I swear, Hizashi had mostly said. But, this. Izuku was seriously wondering what they were talking about. 2. The greenette doubted he taught the full word or sentence for that. He turned back to his notebook and started writing again, continuing a page on a villain. Name/alias, Kurogiri role, a mist villain quirk, some sort of warp gate. His quirk allows him to transport a large number of people to a specific place. But are there limits? Does it need to be in his line of sight? After a while more of writing, he felt the headphones come off, and just about heard his sensei say something. To him. He ignores that and goes to commentating with Hizashi. Hey listeners. Izuku jumped. Welcome back. While everybody was on a break, Midnight had determined the second event. Only the first 42 competitors had gotten in for the cavalry battle. The greenette grins, he's always like this one. The students were asked to form a team of 2 to 4 people during the break, so now, we can get into it. Izuku was asked to announce the teams and their players. First, with over 10 million is Team Monoma, with Ejiro Kirishima, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, 𝐀𝐮𝐿, and 𝐻𝐿. Next is Team Bakugo with 700 starting points, with Katsuki Bakugo, Hitoshi Shinso, 𝗀𝗧𝗃𝗃, and Izuku looked down at a list of names, pinpointing the other student. Lexi Tanaka. He cleared his throat again. Team Todoroki has Shuto Todoroki, Momo Yaoyorozu, and Denki Kaminari. He honestly thought that was a bad matchup. And the fourth top team is Team Uraraka, with Achiko Uraraka, Tsuyu Azui, and Tenya Ida. Then the round started. Almost immediately, half of the teams had went for Team Kirishima, who seemed to have a plan. Monoma held up Kirishima with his hand using a quirk and covered over his head, while Mina made an acid circle around them 𝗏𝗡𝐴 could easily get out of by some of her inventions. Izuku was surprised, and it showed how much he was paying attention when he jumped once he was asked to explain some people's quirks. He started with the general studies student after looking over her quirk for a while. Lexi Tanaka quirk, horror game. From what I've seen, she can take up a form of a horror game character of her choice, but there are clearly limits which I want mentioned to be fair. Izuku seemed uneasy looking at her, and he didn't know why. It wasn't because of her quirk, and he knew it. He then went on to a few Class B students as the battle went on. The general studies girl seemed off to him, playing dirty tricks, and was just generally strange. The second event had ended quickly for him, too quickly. It was like he barely got time to analyze. He sighed but announced the passing teams. In first is Team Uraraka, with 10,005 points. In second is Team Todoroki, with 710 points. Then there is Team Bakugo with 420, then the last passing team is Team Monoma, with 390 points. He announces. He glanced to his sides, his teachers had been quiet. Shoyuta was sleeping, and Hizashi seemed to be thinking HRD on something. Izuku shook his shoulder, and the blonde jumped. Mike-sensei, the cavalry battle is over. Hizashi sighs and cleared his throat to announce the next course of action. Alright, time for a lunch break everybody. Next up is the singular battles, so those who got in, look for your scores up on the screen. Hey Eraser, wanna get some lunch? Izuku looked up and stared at one of the screens on another side of the stadium. The microphones were turned off and Izuku glanced to see his homeroom teacher had woken up. Okay Midoriya, you can go catch up with your class, you've been up here all day. Hizashi says. Izuku nods and got up, walking out of the room to find his friends and some sushi or katsudon. It took a minute or two to walk there, but Izuku finally got to the cafeteria. Before he could get in line, he felt somebody pull him over somewhere. Todoroki. He raised a brow. Were you trying to get somebody else? Yes. The other boy shook his head. No, I just need an opinion and you seem like a good choice. Izuku nods. What do you need me for? Well, you know my father, the number 2 hero. Todoroki states. And how I got my fire side from him. Izuku nods. Yes, what's wrong with it? I want to win this festival without my fire, but am starting to doubt my decision. You're good at analyzing quirks, so you should be able to help. Izuku frowns. Why would you neglect your fire? It's your power, Todoroki, not anybody else's. If you neglect your fire side, would you do the same to your ice? Todoroki shook his head. No. Why would I do that? Why would you neglect your fire? He stayed silent. You're trying without all your power, while I know for a fact that everybody is trying their hardest. Even Kaken thinks it's stupid. Todoroki sighs. Midoriya, have you ever heard of quirk marriages? Yes, quirk marriages were done early on, by one family bribing another for one member to have a child with the other, to make a child with a powerful quirk. By the second to third generation it was made illegal. Izuku explains. Todoroki thought for a moment. Yes, but that didn't stop my father. You see, he bribed my mother's family to, well, create a child to surpass All Might in the hero ranks. And you were the one. Izuku guesses. Yes, but he did have a few failures. My sister, she has the skin for a fire quirk, so she was thought to be it, although she has an ice quirk. My brother, Natsuo, was also a disappointment. Todoroki took a breath and sighed. My oldest brother ran away. He had a fire quirk, blue fire to be exact. He had the figure and skin of an ice user though, and frequently burnt himself before he got sick with everything and ran away. He explains, I am obviously the youngest out of my siblings and was the success. Ever since I got my quirk, my father trained me until I would throw up. He treated me like he was teaching somebody in his agency, and it was horrible. My mother, eventually she had enough of it, and saw my fire side as endeavor. You don't need to continue, Todoroki. It's okay if you don't want to tell anything more. Todoroki shook his head. No, I can continue. I've gotten so far, and I have a feeling you'd keep this secret. You're nice, Midoriya, and I think you'd be able to help in some way, like a therapist. Izuku smiles and nods. I'll do my best. Todoroki then decides to continue the story. Anyhow, my mother had enough of the abuse, and when I caught her in the middle of a phone call, she grabbed a kettle and poured boiling hot water over my eye. She didn't mean to, it just happened. She tried to fix it using her quirk, but that just left the scar. Then father found out and sent her off to a hospital. I haven't seen her for years. Izuku's smile went away. Todoroki, tell me this, does your sperm donor control your quirk? Todoroki chuckles a bit at the nickname. No, but then why have you been implying the fire is his? Because he gave it to me. But Todoroki, it's your own power. Just like mine, basically a carbon copy of a family member's quirk was passed down, but I don't think my quirk is somebody else's. We control our own quirks, you control your fire and ice, while I control my clouds. If my quirk was my uncle's and your quirks are your mother and father's, why do we have control over it? Todoroki had nothing to say for a moment. Because we manifested it. We did, but do they control our quirk? Who commands our quirks? Who has complete control over it? Us. Izuku smiles. Then ignore your sperm donor. He doesn't have control over your quirk when you're the one who commands it. Todoroki stared at Izuku for a moment. Thanks, Midoriya. Izuku sat back up in the announcer's booth, with his teachers on either side of him as a battle went down below. By now, only 2 people were left, and the other 2 were set in 3rd place. Katsuki Bakugo, Shuto Todoroki, Achiko Uraraka, and Tenya Ida. Currently, Katsuki and Shuto were having the last battle of the sports festival, and Shuto had been using his fire ever since lunch. Endeavor had been ignored as he cheered words of encouragement. Shuto hadn't even glanced his way. Oh, that's gotta hurt. Izuku stared down at the fight, where Katsuki had just received a large wall of ice and had almost got knocked out of the ring. Izuku saw it. Katsuki was forcing himself to sweat more to be number 1. It didn't work, and he was forced to resort to fighting. And Katsuki Bakugo is knocked out of the ring. Shuto Todoroki has won the UE Sports Festival. Midnight yells out. Cheering erupted from the crowd, while Katsuki made his way to Recovery Girl with a bit of help from Shuto. His arm was broken, so Shuto had froze it to keep it in place. Shuto had been given a new shirt, and Katsuki was healed to receive his medal. Due to a small amount of time left, Achiko and Tenya weren't allowed to fight to see who actually got 3rd place, so they both had received a medal. It had been a great day in Izuku's opinion. Today, you'll be picking hero code names. Aizawa-sensei announces. Like every other year, after the sports festival, every hero student goes out on an internship, or, for 3rd years, work studies. These will be temporary, but they may stick, so you got to be wise about it. Midoriya, I need to talk to you for a moment. The rest of you, Midnight will explain the rules for your codenames. Izuku got up, a bit confused, and walked out the classroom with Aizawa. He looked up at his teacher. Do I have no offers? Aizawa shook his head. No, you have quite a bit actually. But somebody wanted me to give you this, and I don't like your classmates getting distracted from what they should focus on. Izuku felt something shoved in his hands. A quarterstaff. Aizawa nods. This belonged to somebody you would have heard of, and if you have an ID, be disappointed. Izuku looks the long staff up and down. He stares at a carving at the top. Uncle Oboro. Oboro Shirakumo. The teacher nods. Yes. Shirakumo. Nizu said it would be better for you to have it. It was originally in the memorial at the back of the school. Aizawa admits. Without another word, he walks back in the classroom. Izuku follows and sat back at his seat, looking over the quarterstaff he was given. His friends glanced at it weirdly before turning to their white bards they were given. Izuku took his marker, deciding to think of a hero name. The staff sat in his lap as he thought. SoundCloud. Nah, that's a music app. He sighs, resting his head on his desk until something caught his eye. Loud Cloud. Midnight gasps, and Aizawa seemed to lose his balance on his chair for a moment. Are you sure? You're taking a name of an old hero in training who died. His classmates started whispering to each other. Yes, I'm sure. He was my uncle and I think he'd want me to carry on the name. Midnight nods, but her eyes were still wider than they should be. Accepted. Izuku shivers as he walks out his apartment building, looking up at the cloudy sky. It started to lightly drizzle as he walked out, bags slung over his shoulder. He felt raindrops in his face, some coming more rapidly after a moment. Izuku sighs. He should have replaced his umbrella. Last time it rained he ruined it, and forgot to get another. So, hoping it doesn't rain that heavily, he forms a cloud over his head and starts running the direction of Yui. It's currently a week or so after the sports festival, and his class was using that time to catch up on whatever they had to miss, like more battle training and such. He had no idea what they are going to do today, but he hopes it's not as hard as all the other lessons. Izuku squeaks as he tripped, quickly reacting by using his cloud to keep him up. He glances around, and below his line of sight. He expands his cloud, crouching down in front of a box with an umbrella over it. He looks in, to see two small kittens shivering inside. After a second of thinking, he picked the two up, taking the umbrella and looking on it for a name tag. Hitoshi Shinso was written on the handle of the umbrella. He closes it, tucking it under his arm as he used the other to keep the two kittens held to his chest. The cats meowed, and Izuku assumed they were hungry. He hopes someone has cat milk at school for some reason. He starts to run again, stopping in front of the Yui gate to catch his breath. He was almost late. He had no time to actually walk through the school, so he decides to take a risk and forms a cloud for him to sit on. With the hero classes being somewhere in floors 3 to 6 this year, he had no choice. The other floors had stuff like storage classrooms and also held support course labs, stuff like that. He jumps on the cloud and lifts it up, going to the 3rd floor. He quickly finds his classroom and grins. Izuku saw his seat and his friends crowding around Hitoshi's new desk. Due to the sports festival, 2 students got moved up from Class B, Hitoshi Shinso and Nito Monoma. Shinso, you shouldn't be sitting on your desk. It's school property and is not made to be sat on dash. Oh come on Tenya, loosen up a bit. Izuku laughs, making his classmates jump and look his way. Izuku. Achiko comes over and opens the window, which he immediately went through. He shook off some water and got rid of the cloud, setting the kittens on his desk. Thanks, Achiko. He smiles. Tenny stared over at him. Izuku, you're soaking wet and are those kittens? You shouldn't bring your pets to school. Tenya, chill, I found them in a box on my way. I couldn't just leave these poor kittens there. The older sighs. Alright, I can let this pass. What are you going to do with them? Izuku shrugs. Dunno, maybe keep them, or give you guys one. Oh, and Hitoshi, I found your umbrella. He says, passing Hitoshi his umbrella. Alright, take your seats. Their sensei's voice orders. Izuku and his class start finding their seats. Sensei Aizawa looks over at Izuku. Midoriya, if you're going to bring kittens to school, tell me. Izuku shrunk into his seat a bit as he walks over. The kittens meowed at him and started to climb up his arm once in a close enough distance. To his surprise, his sensei just sighed and let them relax in his capture weapon. Anyways, Aizawa sensei walks back to the front of the class for announcements, looking like he was ignoring the kittens which laid in his capture weapon. Today we'll be going back to the unforeseen simulation joint to actually do rescue training. A few zones are being rebuilt for a better idea of rescue training for the future years, so we won't be going in those. Suit up and meet me at the bus. The students got up and started to leave the room. Izuku felt someone gently grab his shoulder. Midoriya, those kittens are hungry, so I assume you found them somewhere. You can have them back after class. Izuku nods and runs back out to catch up with his class. The first thing Izuku heard when he came back home was his mother's crying. He pushed the door open and walked inside, closing it behind him. Mom. He glanced around and decided to walk to her room after a second of trying to find her. Mom, are you okay? He asks when outside her door, waiting a moment before deciding to walk in. He was greeted by his mother sat on her bed, trying to muffle her cries. Izuku was immediately by her side and started calming her down. The kittens decided to crawl on her lap while it was happening. What's wrong? 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 rubs her eyes and points to a calendar as a reply, hiding her face in her hands once Izuku looked over at the calendar. Oh, it's today, huh? Izuku sighs, staring at the current date on the calendar. May 5th. Are you in the mood to visit? Izuku asks once 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's cries started to quiet. It's been a while, he states. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 stayed silent for a moment, before slowly nodding at her son. Just calm down and get dressed. We can spend as long as you'd like there, I don't mind. It's supposed to be his birthday, it's understandable this happened. Izuku picked up the kittens and eked out after a second longer, and to his own room. Izuku set the kittens down on his bed before getting changed. He decided on a light blue, worn-out sweater with cloud designs on them. He had no idea how he got it, but he liked it. He decided on normal black breathes and his classic red shoes after a moment of trying to find some breathes. Quickly combing his wild, aqua-tinted hair, he picked the kittens back up and met 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 at the door. Passing her a tissue, Izuku softly smiles. It's okay, Mom, you can cry. The walk to the cemetery wasn't as negative as you'd think it would be, it was. Still bad though. They had decided to walk, with the distance not far. Once 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 had seen the kittens with clear eyes, she had started to ramble about her brother, and how similar they were, and Izuku didn't blame her. Messy, gravity-defying hair. Love for cats. Quirk. Izuku could honestly go on, but it wasn't the time. He was always compared to 𝐴𝐵𝐴𝐵 and he felt somewhat proud to be like him. His uncle died like a hero, it would be stupid not to feel proud. On day the two reached the gravestone, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 stared down at it. You know, during high school he befriended his entire class and the others, but only 4 actually got close to him. Izuku listened, a bit curious on why she brung it up. You'd know them, all being pro-heroes. Izuku, please, whatever you do in school I won't care about, just don't die like him, and leave so many people behind. Izuku caught 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 before she could fall, and patted his mother's back. Mom, they'll be fine, I promise. He sighs. And even if it does happen, we both died a hero's death, most likely both saving people. That's something you should be proud of. You dying? No, not that. Izuku sighs. I meant you should be proud of both of us thinking of others before ourselves. You'd have 2 direct family members who died saving lives, you should be proud he did. He smiles. Even if he did lose his life, he allowed others to carry on living theirs. That's when the crying started. The week of deciding internships was hard, especially with the students who had a large amount of requests. But for Izuku, it was harder. To his luck, he had 4 teachers send him a request, and had to think hard about his decision. After a bit of asking around, he decided on his internship. Because the hero course internships are 2 weeks long, he had been able to fit in 2 pro heroes he could learn from, and both of them work at UE, but he was allowed to choose the time and such, having one keep him for a week and a half dash. It was a bit hard to decide on who to go to first, but eventually decided on his own homeroom teacher, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 Aizawa. Due to them both basically fighting quirkless, it was good to learn from his teacher even more for Izuku. He had heard that Hitoshi got an offer from him too, but went for gunhead with Achiko unfortunately. Currently, it was time for his class to go off to their separate internships, and the whole class is currently at the train station with Aizawa-sensei talking to them about quirk laws, rules, and even more that the hero course needs to be aware of at their age. While his classmates had their hero costumes and bags, Izuku didn't need to bring anything since they already had it sorted. Class will soon separate to their separate internships, and Izuku was left with his black-haired sensei. Midoriya, let's go. I'm an underground hero, so, for now we won't be going outside for hero work. We will be working with your ability to make clouds, and how long you can keep them up before getting congested or sick. He started to walk off, and Izuku followed behind him. Hi, sensei. But I've actually timed it a while ago. I can keep clouds up for around an hour with one of the good strips that will block out any sickness. Without him I can only keep a small one up for around 3 minutes. The Revent nods. Good to know. Maybe we can find a way for you to manipulate your clouds and maybe the weather for them. Izuku stares. That would be so cool. But Eve never tried. Aizawa nods. I guess you could say that. Have you ever tried changing anything in your clouds? Izuku nods. Yeah, actually, I tried to use anything but moisture in the air, but that didn't turn out too good. Clouds are mostly air, you should know that would fail. I used a bit of air. A bit is not enough. Izuku sighs. This is going to be one hell of an internship. Midoriya, focus, you're not going to get anywhere if you keep getting distracted. Izuku weakly nods, staring down at the small cloud in his hands. He's been feeling sick for a while, but decided not to mention it. Aizawa-sensei had decided to bring him to a spare room in his house to train. Currently, the greenette started trying to change the weather in his clouds, and only got one a bit darker so far. He glared at the cloud and focused harder, his glare sharpening every second he stared at it. He felt a spark of electricity and squeaked, moving the cloud away from him. He heard a small chuckle behind him but ignored it. Midoriya, sit down, this would be a bit easier if you haven't been making a large cloud for 20 minutes beforehand. You look nauseous and you need food. Aizawa sighs, erasing Izuku's quirk for a second. Izuku plopped down on a chair and yawns. Do you think that changing the weather in my clouds takes away energy? Something from me. Izuku asks, taking the bento offered to him with a thank you. I think it depends. Maybe if you try making it rain you'll get dehydrated. Lighting probably would take away energy. I guess we could find out tomorrow. Aizawa mumbles, earning a nod. Tomorrow. Izuku tilted his head. Yes, tomorrow. I start my hero work at 9 and end at 3 in the morning. You need to have a rest before we go. Aizawa states. Izuku was about to speak, but was cut off again. It's 5, Midoriya. If you go to sleep now you'll have 4 hours of sleep and more energy when we go out. Izuku sighs and rubs his eyes tiredly. But sensei, I don't need any sleep. The Ravenet stared for a moment sternly. Take a nap, come on. Izuku stood up and stretched, following his sensei to another storeroom where a bed was kept. Take a nap, and when you try staying awake, try thinking on how to improve your technique and quirk. Izuku sighs and nods. Hi, sensei. He mutters before the door was closed. He fell down on the bed after eating, of course, and wrapped himself in the blankets, accepting defeat. He started to doze off, but quickly realized something. Wait a minute dash. Midoriya, wake up. Izuku groans and buried his face in the nearest pillow. You need to get dressed into your hero costume and wake up properly. Izuku groans again as a reply. He felt the pillows get taken away, so he tried hiding himself in the blanket before it was also taken from him. Sensei. He pouts. Get changed. The blanket was thrown back at him, and the pillows were thrown on the floor. Izuku got up and searched for his case, quickly getting changed before walking out. He sat on the couch and waited for his sensei, who he assumed was drinking coffee. Once he did come in, Izuku turned to him. Sensei, you're 30, right? Aizawa nods. And you went to UE in class A. The same response came from him. Not to assume anything or insult you, but did you know my uncle? I've noticed you've been a bit softer on me sometimes, and I doubt you're just going soft. Izuku had a habit to notice a lot of things and connect the dots fast. It was clearly seen just by how fast he came up with a theory. Izuku saw his sensei stop, then slouch down a bit more. We can discuss this later, but since you're so desperate for an answer, yes, I did know him. His teacher chugged down the last of his coffee and set the cup on a table. Anyhow, let's go. Izuku nods and stood up, grabbing his bow staff and sliding it into its slot. So, how long will we be out again? Izuku asks. 6 hours. His sensei replies. But if you get too tired, we'll come back. He adds, earning a nod from Izuku. Now, do you know how to do parkour? It had been a tiring night for Izuku, and he only lasted for 3 hours before starting to get tired. At times he would slip from a rooftop and had either Aizawa-sensei or a cloud catch him. He had good enough luck that he didn't fall when they found some thugs doing illegal stuff. Thankfully, they hadn't found any mutant quirk users with a strong quirk. Since it was the underground, Izuku was exposed to a few people using drags too, like Trigger, a drag that temporarily boosts somebody's quirk dangerously. He only ran into a group of people using those with his sensei, and currently, they're in a fight with that group. Loud Cloud, be careful. Eraserhead says over to his intern, his long capture weapon wrapping around one of the group members. He surprisingly swung the thug around with ease and threw him at another team member. Sensei, one of them has an illusion quirk. With it boosted with Trigger, it's dangerous. Keep your eyes on the white-haired one. Izuku turned and spun his staff in his fingers, using his clouds to take some force from any attacks. Another has a telekinesis quirk. I can handle him. He heard his sensei groan in annoyance. Fine, but don't hurt yourself much. He says, knocking out another thug. So far they knocked out 4 of 6, and the last 2 had dangerous quirks by the drag, Trigger. It took a bit for Izuku to take down the telekinesis quirk user, but he did by the time his sensei took the other down. Once the criminals were tied up, Izuku let out a sigh of relief and leaned back on the wall behind him, closing his eyes. Tired? Aizawa questions. My head also feels sticky. Izuku replies. He felt his hair get brushed to the side, then some bandages being wrapped around his forehead. You need to take more care of yourself, you got hit in the head. Aizawa mumbles. You also look tired. We can go back, you need to be awake tomorrow to train. You lasted longer than I thought you would though, it's 1 in the morning. Aizawa calls the police, then picked Izuku up. Sensei, you do care. Izuku laughs. Aizawa rolls his eyes. I thought you knew that already. He mutters. But I'm your favorite, right? I'm not supposed to choose favorites. The next few days went smoothly in Izuku's opinion. It was a great internship with Aizawa, more than he originally thought. There was a schedule to follow, but it wasn't strict. In Izuku's opinion, it was somewhat similar to his usual workout schedule. But harder. Midoriya, I said you can have a break. Show you to size. Go sit down or whatever, I don't care. You look sick and I don't want you to push yourself right now. Izuku felt a hand on his shoulder, and another took away his staff. But sensei, I like training, and I like getting stronger. That's what this internship is about, getting stronger, but you can't overwork yourself. Go sit down, you can train later. If you need me, you'll be napping. Izuku sighs and nods. I'll try not to wake you up. He walks out the room and walks around, trying to find something to do. Izuku hasn't really had time to look around that much, being busy with sleep, training, or just being out with his sensei. He hadn't had time to snoop around or anything. Aizawa's apartment wasn't at all bad, and it was homey in Izuku's opinion. Photos lines the walls, and he had 3 cats that would constantly sleep or meow. Izuku liked it. Speaking of cats, Izuku felt one nuzzle his leg and crouched down to pick it up. Well, hello, present meow. He chuckles. What trouble shall we cause today? All he got was a loud meow in reply. Yes, the worst of all, snooping around. The cat meowed and purred as Izuku started walking, scratching behind the cat's ear. There was a few photos of Aizawa during his time at UE, and Izuku loved them. Seeing his sensei as a teen made him less threatening since Izuku could always imagine a teen Aizawa when he was doing one of his logical ruses. Looking at photos on the wall escalated into looking in drawers, and eventually finding some old yearbooks from when Aizawa was a teenager. One caught Izuku's eye, so he decided to take it out and sit on the couch with the cats. Oboro's photo book was written in marker where a stuck-on label was, and Izuku couldn't help but be curious. Oboro. Must be a coincidence. If my uncle was friends with my teacher's mom would have told me. Izuku mumbles, flipping the photo book open to its first page. The first thing he realized when he opened the book was that basically none of the photos were set in order. The first one was just the top half of somebody's face, light blue hair flowing around his head like a cloud. No way. Izuku gapes, glancing down at a few other pictures. Izuku squinted at a certain dark photo, probably taken under trees. He could just about see everything. A cloud. His eyes widen. After a second he snaps out of the staring and looks down at the other photos. I was wondering when you'd find that. Izuku squeaks at the deep voice of his sensei and turns around. Sorry, I got bored and saw this in dash. Shush, I don't care. I was going to show you that at some point anyways. Never did answer your question about knowing 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 properly. Izuku nods and turned back to the photo book once he calmed down from the mini heart attack he had. A few have my face in it so you would find out anyways. Aizawa sighs, sitting down next to Izuku. How far have you gotten? Oh, I just looked at the first page. Izuku replies silently. If you're wondering why one of those pictures are so dark, he took that when we were at a training camp. Izuku nods. Figures. Usually Quirk training camps are surrounded by trees and nature. Aizawa looks over Izuku's shoulder to look at the pictures. Is that present Mike? Izuku laughs, spotting a picture of a blonde-haired teenager with as many glasses and goggles on his face. He was grinning and had the same looking shades present Mike wore up to this day. You can see Midnight in the background too. And you behind him. Izuku assumes. Oh yeah. Back then Tensei didn't know us, so that's definitely me. Vincent. Ida Tensei. Aizawa nods. So, have any pictures of baby Tenya stored somewhere? Izuku smirks. If you leak it to your classmates you can't tell them where you got them from. My lips are sealed. Sensei, how long until we're there? Izuku asks, glancing around the bullet train they were currently in. I told you, you don't need to call me Sensei. And we'll be there in about 5 minutes. We're in Hosu, but the train station is pretty far away. Aizawa replies, leaning back in his seat. It feels strange calling you by your name, especially without Sensei with it. Izuku sighs. It's only fair, but you can call me whatever you want anyways. Aizawa shrugs, hiding the lower half of his face in his capture weapon. I guess it is. You don't act like just a teacher to me, and I bet I would have known you since BNHA if that incident didn't happen. Izuku mutters. Anyways, what are we doing anyways? Hosu has a lot of criminals. It's good for you to fight in there since you'll get more experience. Aizawa replies. Izuku was about to respond but something cut him off. Passengers, please stay calm and in your seats, we'll be stopping soon. Izuku was about to panic a burr before there was suddenly a 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿, which had broken through the train trying to run from a hero which was following it. Midoriya, you have permission to use your quirk, and any classmates you run into do too. Try staying out of trouble. Izuku turned to Aizawa, only to see him already kicking the 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 at its weak spot, the brain. Izuku reacted fast, and ran to help, quickly doing what he did last time to make the 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 temporarily inactive. Midoriya, go find your classmates. 3 of them are in Hosu and could be in danger. Izuku made a cloud and jumped onto it, making sure his phone was in his pocket before flying himself through Hosu. He eventually landed and got rid of the cloud. He was greeted by a group of toddlers running into him. Some recognized him as a hero due to his hero outfit standing out against normal clothing. The other half kept panicking and cried into Izuku's arms. Izuku had crouched down and started to calm down the toddlers in his arms. Shoo, everything is fine. Us heroes are protecting you. Don't worry, the baddies won't win. Izuku smiles, tracing circles on one's back, who was heavily crying. Izuku theorized the kid had some sort of a hydration quirk. There was a loud bang, and Izuku knew they had to move. He made a cloud and set the kids on it, holding another in his arms. He started running, making the cloud follow next to him. Mommy! He heard a child cry. Izuku sighed. Some heroes really need to actually calm the children in the area down. Okay you all, I need you all to be heroes and stay here, be brave. I'm going to find some more of you to make you all feel safe. He smiles. A few calmer toddlers weakly nodded. Izuku expanded the cloud and set the last child down, running towards any signs of crying or panicked children. He felt eyes on him when he ran around, picking out the children, ranging from ages 1 to 13, and setting them all in a safe area. Okay, 10, 15. Izuku started counting all the children he found. There's 29 of you. His eyes widen. There was another bang, and Izuku started running again with the cloud next to him. He held a few hands, trying to keep slow but also fast to get away from any chaos. He stopped at an alley and froze at what he saw. A few children started to whimper, and he tried to shush them as fast as possible. When he went to confront the others in the alley, he felt small hands hold him back. He glanced down and saw a monochrome-shaded toddler start to hold him back. "No, don't buy," he cried, gaining the attention of the 3 others in the alley. He felt 3 sets of eyes on him and ignored it for a moment. "Shoo, it'll be fine, I won't leave you, it'll be right over there." He kneeled down and hugged the boy, setting him on a large cloud that held half the children. "Keep their eyes from inside the alley, please," he whispers to the older children, who nodded. He turned back and set the cloud safely to the side before taking out his staff defensively. 𝐶𝐻. He stared up at the creepy man, who held out his blades, ready to strike. The man completely ignored what Izuku said and glanced over at the 2 clouds of children. "Why do you keep those children here? You should know it's not wise currently." He questions, I can't just leave them alone, most of them are toddlers and haven't even manifested a quirk." Izuku replies, glancing over at 2 bodies. "Tenya, 𝐶𝐻𝐿, Midoriya, please, stay out of here and protect those kids." Tensei pleaded. "You don't need to fight, help is on the way already." Izuku shook his head. "Quirk." Tenya hesitated before replying. "It's BLD related, he stabbed my arm and cut Tensei's cheek. A small amount of BLD made us paralyzed." Izuku thought for a moment, spinning his staff. "Well, there's 2 possibilities. Either it relies on BLD type or the amount of BLD, and from what you said, I assumed he liked the BLD, yes." Stain charged at Izuku, who quickly dodged, trying to knock Stain off his feet. Stain kept in place and sliced down where Izuku was. Izuku jumped out of the way and smacked him on the back with his staff. He tried to keep this as far from a real fight as possible. Izuku dodged attack after attack, keeping a distance from the kids so none of them could get hurt. Izuku started to feel sick, but pushed himself to make another cloud, which turned a dark gray and started to produce rain. It took a bit, but while the hero killer and Izuku were fighting, it started to produce lightning too. From the corner of Izuku's eye, he saw Tensei shift. Izuku smirks, Stain's quirk must have worn off. There was a harsh kick to Stain's side, and Izuku looked over to see Tensei had gotten up and started fighting again. "Tenya, you got permission to use your quirk by Eraserhead. Once you get up, get fighting if possible, I need to protect those kids." Izuku shouts over to Tenya, who by now is at the other end of the alley. 𝐻𝐮𝐦𝐸𝐵, mind heating the place up." Izuku got the rain cloud and slammed his staff down on it. It separated into separate clouds, and water was everywhere like fog. There was noises of engines starting, and some water started to evaporate. The area started fogging up, and Izuku decided to get rid of the clouds. Stain had gotten out of the situation a bit fast, and threw a dagger where he assumed Izuku would be. Izuku was on the other side, and his eyes widened when he saw a kid had snuck off the cloud and walked to the battle. Stain was going to stab the kid. He reacted fast, falling to his knees to the height of the small toddler. He felt the dagger impale itself into Izuku's back, and the fog started to clear. The child started crying, catching the attention of Stain once more. The vigilante's eyes widened at what he was aiming for, seeing the toddler clearly. Tensei took that as an opportunity to tackle the hero killer, taking some ropes he carried to tie him up. Tenya started to shift around, and stood up. "Midoriya." He starts to shuffle the direction of Izuku, letting his brother take care of the hero killer. "Tenya, I'm fine, take care of the kid." Izuku ignored the knife in his back, and went to help Tensei. "Midoriya no dash, Tenya ida." take care of the children. Izuku started stripping Stain of his weapons, checking any places he thinks could keep another before helping tie Stain up. Stain rolls his eyes, letting himself get captured. Well, at least it was by a real hero, he thought. Tensei picked Stain up as his brother called the police, letting Izuku talk to the kids. The one that had been targeted hadn't stopped crying, and had jumped into Izuku's arms once able to. "Sure, it's okay, you're all safe from the meanie," he says to the toddlers. The one in his arms pulled himself up to look over Izuku's shoulder. "I sorry." The child sobbed, eyes flashing light gray. Izuku felt a pinch at his back, and the sound of a dagger fall on the floor. Izuku crouched down and picked up a blood-soaked dagger, tracing circles on the child's back. "Sure, you don't need to be," Izuku smiles. "Look, you're my hero now." He wiped the blood off the dagger and let the 3-year-old look at it. "Wah." Izuku chuckles at the reaction. "Look, you have a quirk, and you saved my dear back from cramping," he jokes. The child sniffles and wipes his eyes. But I ran in without thinking." Izuku guesses. The child nods. "You know, many heroes have a story, and the best always say they ran into action without thinking. You tried to save us, that's something heroic." The child buried his face into Izuku's shoulder and sniffles. Izuku calmed the toddler, and set him back on a cloud. He felt a pair of tiny hands on his back. He glances behind him and sees another kid with her hands on his back. "Now, what are you doing, Missy?" he asks with a chuckle. "Hero," she answers. Izuku felt warmth at his back, and the tiny hands retreat. "Mama said I'd take pain away." Izuku smiles. "Aw, you didn't need to." He chuckles. But I didn't do much." Izuku turns and picks her up. "You saved me from crying in pain, that's for sure." It took a bit, but eventually the police arrived. By then Izuku was hidden with the toddlers, who had taken a liking to him. It didn't last long, and the kids soon were asked to move aside for a second. Izuku got up, squeaking when he was pulled from the floor. A winged 𝐀𝐮𝐽𝐻. His eyes widen. He looks down, feeling a weight on his foot. "Hey kid, do you trust me?" The child nods. "Ready to fall. I promise my quirk will catch you." The toddler squeaks but nods again. Izuku made a cloud under them, ready to also jump, but then the 𝐀𝐻𝐻 suddenly stopped and started falling. Izuku quickly got out of the 𝐀𝐻𝐻's grasp and fell on the cloud with the kid with him. He lowers the cloud down as he heard the hero killer scream something about fake and real heroes, before jumping down and getting back into police custody. The older kids were keeping the youngest from running over and swarming Izuku. He felt a doctor pull him to a cot and lay him down, sending the toddler away after a bit so they could make their way to the hospital. Izuku glanced to the side and saw the 𝐸𝐸𝐷a brothers, one also in a cot while the other was sat on a chair, leg broken. Izuku sighs. "Well, I signed up for this, didn't I?" he thought before deciding to relax. May as well get hospital visits over and done with. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 has been feeling off lately, as if something was wrong. Currently, he sat at his bar, a glass of alcohol in his hand as he watched TV. Usually, he'd never drink and hadn't had alcohol in a few years. Ever since there was an incident with Tamura as a child, he never drank anything to get himself drunk, even if he did have a high tolerance to alcoholic drinks. Owning a bar, it was weird, but he never cared. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, tell me you're not watching the sports festival again." Tamura sighs. "I am not." 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 replied, grabbing the TV remote and changing channel before Tamura could see what was on. He took a sip of his drink and looked away from the misty blue-haired man. "Is that alcohol?" 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 laughed nervously under his breath and drank the rest of it, quickly hiding the bottle the liquid came from. "No, it's just juice." He lies. "Juice. You hate juice," Tamura states, walking over. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 silently groans, finally feeling some minor effects of the alcohol. "What do you mean? I like juice." 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 replies, looking over at the younger. "Whatever you say. Anyhow, Hestier has some interest in that cloud kid who was with Present Mike at the sports festival. He says he could be a threat and would mess up his plans." Tamura sighs. "Apparently we got to kidnap him or dispose of him." "No. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 stood up and slammed his hands on the bar, before clearing his throat and sitting back down calmly. I mean, why do we need to exactly? That teenager doesn't look like he's much of a threat. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, we saw that kid take down 𝗏𝗡𝗏 size. He's a threat. He could take down you if he wanted. Your quirks basically collapse against each other, and without a warp gate we are both screwed. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 thought and sighed. Yes, my apologies. I've forgotten about that incident. Izuku woke up to whispers surrounding him, each trying to be as quiet as possible. The voices were childlike, and Izuku felt small hands try poke him awake. He yawns and opened his eyes, only to be greeted by a bright hospital light. Mimi, he's awake. One cheers, setting off all the others. Izuku glanced around, only to see a group of toddlers surrounding his bed. Another few group of children surrounded Tenya, and Tensei was off to the side to see how his brother was healing and such. Izuku felt something shift in his arms and looked down. He saw 3 toddlers had occupied his arms. Well, hello there, you problem children. He laughs. The 3 look up and stare up at him. How are all my heroes doing? One tilted his head. But I was on your leg. You were brave, Izuku smiles. The 3 giggle. We're okay, Mr. Cloudy. One of them grins. What are you all doing here? He asks the group, only to have them all start talking and screaming at the same time, wanting to be heard over each other. They were shushed by a white-haired woman who walked over. Hello, sorry about the kids. A few of them were separated from the daycare or their parents during the attack. I'm their teacher. The ones who were saved by you wanted to visit, and the others wanted to give you gifts. She chuckles. Izuku smiles. Oh, you all didn't need to. He laughs. I never wanted a fan club. The toddlers started to giggle. He's funny. Izuku heard one say over to her friend. Anyhow, I don't think I told you my name. I'm Midoriya Izuku, and my hero name is Loud Cloud. I go to UE High. He saw a few toddlers stare up at him in awe. My brother is at UE too, Todoroki Shudo, he's a first year. Izuku stared up at the lady for a moment. Oh, he's in my class actually. The women smiled at him. How has he been? He really needs to socialize more. He's been giving us all the cold shoulder ever since the semester started. But he's actually talked to me and he's pretty ice. He's actually told me about you. The woman rolls her eyes but smiles. Okay, away from my brother and me, they want to stay for a while, so sorry if these kids annoy you. Izuku shook his head. Why would these lovelies annoy me? He turned his attention to a kid with magma-looking hair, who started asking him some questions. Fuyumi-sensei, can we do it? A child asks her sensei. Fuyumi nods, and a small amount of the toddlers ran outside, dragging in a few bags full of paper and boxes. Well, you've been out for a while, and they wanted to make something big for their new heroes. We did paper crafts, dioramas, paintings, and some things with cotton wool. Fuyumi explains. It's a large class, and some wanted to make 2 for you, and those 2 brothers. Izuku nods. That's sweet of them. Fuyumi nods before turning to her class, separating the crafts and giving them to its creator. Izuku tried to sit up, but was pushed back down by the toddlers in his arms. So, he grabbed a remote on the side of the bed, and sat himself up. He saw a few toddlers run over to the Idas, giving them paintings and some papier-mâché statues. Another few had made dioramas as best as they could, most likely having a lot of help from their teachers while making them. They wanted to be a little extra and made a lot. Fuyumi laughs. Some made simpler things, and a lot decided to make something with papier-mâché. I ended up helping a lot. She picks up a small cloud statue of papier-mâché. They also wanted to try and make 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐽 sitting on this, but I said it was too hard. Izuku sighs. Well, they tried and the effort is enough. He smiles, thanking one of the toddlers who had passed him a small circle made out of wool, which had been pressed down by soap and water. There was a small cloud in it, and Izuku liked it. After a bit, a nurse walked in the room. Sorry, but I'm afraid you need to leave. Visiting hours are over. She sighs. You can all come back tomorrow if you'd like, none of you caused any trouble. The toddlers whined, but Fuyumi stopped it. We can visit again, don't worry. She smiles. The toddlers in Izuku's arms whined a bit more, but allowed the teacher to pick them up and set them down. The kids waved goodbye before leaving. Sheesh, those kids really know how to be extra. Well, there was like 30 kids in that class. Look, one made me a papier-mâché cloud. Izuku smiles. Tensei laughs. Ah, that's cute. It has a small smiley face on it. Izuku nods. Yep, and I'll cherish this forever. If I break it, I'll never forgive myself. Izuku smiles, setting the papier-mâché clouds to the side with a few other gifts. Before Tenya could voice a question, the door opened again. 3 people walked in, one, Aizawa-sensei, another was a dog-looking cop, while the last was Principal Nizu. Nizu waved and smiled as Aizawa glared at Tensei. Midoriya. How's your back? Good, I hope. Nizu says, walking over to Izuku's bed. Izuku smiles back at him. It's okay, can't feel it, but I think it was that kid's quirk or it's just gotten healed. That's good to hear. Although the doctors did say the stab was deep. Nizu sighs. I can't believe you. Couldn't you have made a cloud to protect the child and yourself? Izuku frowns. It was on instinct, I wasn't thinking. Nizu stares at Izuku for a moment, eventually replying. Well, you truly are a hero. Nizu was cut off from saying more when the dog cop started speaking. All right, please don't carry on the conversation. I have things to say to you 3 who fought the hero killer, he starts. Tensei shrunk down in his chair. Firstly, what 𝐒𝐮𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐸𝐴 to bring a student to the fight? Tensei squeaks but thinks up a reply. Well, it wasn't on purpose, we just ran into Stain and he couldn't get out without getting hurt. The cop stared for a moment. You are getting paperwork for that, woof? The cop turned to Izuku. Can you explain how you ran into the scene? Well, I was rounding up kids that were separate from their carers, and when I ran from a 𝐻𝐿 with them I looked into an alley and saw Stain with Tenya and Tensei, and those 2 were both paralyzed. Izuku explains. The cop nods. Now, away from that, woof, we need to discuss more. On one note, both you students were given permission to fight and use your quirks, so I can't punish you both for that, woof. On another side, there were witnesses, and not just the children, who had recorded the fight. You have been leaked to the media, and currently it's impossible to cover up. For this you both need to make a public statement about the fight and what happened, woof. The cop explains. The 2 students nod. After a few more sentences, the cop exited and Nizu and Aizawa cornered Izuku. Aizawa shook Izuku by the shoulders. Don't scare us like that. That knife was deep. He glares a bit, and Izuku's sweat drops. I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking and I don't think I could have made another cloud anyways. Izuku mumbles. Nizu sighs. Now, since you've missed the last part of your internship with me, during the school week you need to stay back until we get all I wanted to teach you covered. Nizu says. Izuku sighs. Hi, sensei. Izuku and Tenya stood outside their classroom door, expecting questions once they walk in. They glance at each other for a moment, before just deciding to walk in and get it over with. As their classmates immediately bombarded them with questions. Tenya pushed past their classmates, dragging Izuku with him. Izuku stayed as close as possible, trying to avoid answering the questions. They sat at their desks, unfortunately a far bit from each other's. Questions followed them both to their seats, but were silenced as All Might walked through the door. I am here. To start your class. All Might smiles. Get changed. Hero costumes aren't needed, but you can wear them if you please. It hadn't taken long for the class to get changed and follow their teacher to the area they'd be training in. It had ended up being a factory-looking set, with piped everywhere and small buildings around the place. Izuku was sure this would be easy. Today is rescue training. All Might announces. Tenya put up his hand, confused. Shouldn't we be going to the USJ for this? Since this SI Rikyu training we should go to a place made for it. All Might nods. Good point, but today is a different type of rescue training. I'll be sending off a SOS from a platform in this set, and Sai is just like a race. The first person to show up wins and had saved me. The blonde explains. Izuku grins. So, it is going to be easy. He thought. All Might took out a stack of cards. Now, hand these out. The number on your card determines which few students will go first. Izuku took his and looked down at his card. Now, who's first? Izuku's hand shot up, followed by another 3. 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐽, Monoma, and Mina had also gotten the first card. Alright, look at the back of your card, and you'll find a letter. That letter is what your starting point is. Izuku turned his over. He was set at what he assumed could be one of the furthest points. They got led to the set as a screen came on for the others to watch. Izuku made a cloud and found his starting point easily. From what he's seen, there were more buildings at some point, which he assumed was to mess up whoever had some sort of telekinesis or flight quirk. Izuku stood on the platform he was told to start on, ready to make another cloud. A bell went off and Izuku felt a vibration in his pocket. He created another cloud and jumped on it, pulling out his phone to quickly check the location. He put it back in his pocket and started to move closer. He passed Mina, who had slipped a few times on her acid. Mina notices him and squeaks, slipping off the place she was on. Izuku pushed her back up with a cloud before continuing to find All Might. Who do you think will win? Someone asks, staring up at the screen. Hitoshi shrugs. I'm betting on Izuku. With his clouds he can travel on, it's likely he'll get there first or at least second. Katsuki replies. Good point, but 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐽 can latch onto stuff with his tape. Achiko says. Also Mina is pretty fast with her acid, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Tsu adds. It's all even 𝐀𝐻. If Monoma can Izuku's quirk, that is. The others nod. But all Izuku needs to do is ride on a cloud. Katsuki points out. But there's obstacles that he needs to dodge that the others travel with. Tenya mumbles. They're all pretty close to reaching All Might, so we really can't be sure on who'll win. Ojiro nods. Izuku is literally using his cloud as a hoverboard. Achiko states, staring up at the screen with an amused expression. Izuku smirks. Almost there. He glares over at the direction All Might is supposed to be standing. He felt his cloud falter and silently cuss it. Yoink! He felt somebody tap his neck, making him trip a bit. Before he could fall, he made a small cloud and bounced off it, landing on the roof of one of the buildings. Wait, Monoma dash. He started, sighing when he saw Monoma try use his quirk. Izuku stood there for a few seconds before making another cloud. He thought for a moment and smirked. The end of the cloud darkened, electricity cackling from right behind it. He felt a small boost and carefully avoided face-planting on a building. He saw 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐽 with Mina following from behind him as fast as possible. Before he knew it, the round was over. Young 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐽 has came first. All Might announces. Izuku smiles and congratulates 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐽. Came close, but you're better. He says. 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐽 laughs. Hey, I only won because I was falling and you were on a cloud. You're second though. Good job, man. 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐽 smiles back. I can't believe exams are coming up, it still feels so early in the year. Achiko sighs. Tenya laughs. Well, some training exercises are considered fun, and we tend to forget about other lessons and focus on the more exciting ones. We must have lost track of everything. Izuku nods from beside Tenya and Hitoshi. Michim. Although 𝐸𝐵 been getting sick a lot, everything was fun and 𝐸𝐵 been focusing on more exciting and important stuff. I forgot what I even had for breakfast last week. He laughs. Katsuki snorts. Good job, Izuku. Anyways, what do you think exams will be? He saw Monoma walk by as he said it. Oh, Kendo said she has a friend from the year above. It's likely it's robots or teachers apparently. The blonde butts in. Since the original Class A has experience with villains, we need a challenge, and everybody passed last year with robots from what 𝐸𝐵 heard. Oh, thanks Monoma. Monoma smiles at the thanks and walks off. So, if it is teachers, who do you think everyone will be up against? Katsuki questions. Tenya shrugs while Izuku thinks, a finger to his chin. He starts to mutter. Well, due to quirks, weaknesses, fears from what I've seen and others, I have a rough idea of what first-year teachers we could be up against. It would be cruel for us to go with teachers we don't see often. The others kept quiet and started to listen. It's likely Jiro would be against Present Mike, due to her quirk giving her over-average hearing, and with the similarities in their quirks. Hitoshi will most likely go against a more silent hero, like Snipe or Aizawa-sensei. He continued, ending at himself. And it's likely for me to be against either Present Mic, Snipe, or Ectoplasm. There are obvious weaknesses that can be used against me and those can use it against me. The group was silent for a moment. I didn't know you were so smart. Tsu gapes. Oh, smart. Nah, I just analyze quirks in my free time. Izuku smiles. Thanks for thinking that, though. So, why do you want to join the League of Villains? Tamura asks, directing the question at a black-haired, burnt man. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 watched from behind his bar, stumbling a bit as he wandered around. He didn't know when the habit started, but whenever it was too silent somewhere, or if he was nervous, he'd walk around. Currently, Tamura has started to interview anyone who wants to join the league, and so far they got a nice amount of villains to join. The only one left was who 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 had nicknamed Burnt Chicken Nugget. He didn't know why, and just did, and assumed it's just his drunk mind being stupid. So far, they have enough to attack Yui again, but only a small amount of it. One who introduced himself as Mr. Compress is one that 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 just didn't like, even if he was keeping others under control. He wasn't the only one 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 had a problem with. For a while, he's had a bad feeling about Tamura, and with the league getting bigger, he assumed it was just because he has power over the whole league. Others, like that toga girl, made him uneasy, and the only exception was a kid nicknamed Mustard. The kid was only about 12 and shouldn't even be near the league. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 glanced over at Tamura, flinching when he felt his arm get stabbed. Himiko. He glances down at the shallow wound, glad to see it wasn't bleeding much. He grabbed a cloth and started to wipe away all the BLD. I want to know what it's like being in mist. The blonde-haired teenager says, liking the BLD from her knife. So, you can't just do that to 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Tamura states, glaring at the girl who had started to activate her quirk. Himiko had her hair start to float and lighten, her skin started to darken, but soon it stopped. I had enough BLD, is something wrong with my quirk? She questions. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 sighs and walks off to wrap up the stab wound. Yep, those new villains were going to be a handful. Nem. Hisashi looks over at his friend who sat down on the couch. The Ravenette's face was hidden behind her knees, and she hadn't moved for a while. The blonde noticed a few of his co-workers glance her way, before leaving them to talk. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 sat next to him, deciding it was a friend matter. What's wrong? The two stood up and walked over, Hisashi sitting down next to her while 𝐀𝐮𝐴 had stuck to the end of the couch. Nothing. The woman mumbles, trying not to look over at her friend. Namuri, you're obviously upset, what's wrong? Is it Midoriya? 𝐀𝐮𝐴 asks, frowning down at her, who had started to nod. How can you look at him? He resembles 𝐻𝐻𝐵oro too much, he even has his quirk. Namuri sniffs, looking over at her friends. But, it's not him, and it's hard to remember that he took on 𝐻𝐵𝐿oro's hero name. Aren't you two the slightest bit upset you see him every day? I can't stand looking at a kid who resembles him so much. Hisashi frowns. You're right, it's not 𝐻𝐵𝐿oro, it's his nephew. That kid took after him a lot, even when it's obvious that Midoriya wasn't even born when he was alive. He sighs, not really knowing how to go with his reply. And that means Midoriya is his own person, not 𝐻𝐵𝐿oro. They may be similar, but you need to remember it's not our best friend we went to school with 15 years ago. You can't just avoid Midoriya and hope it'll turn out good. Don't keep your mind in the past. Midoriya is not 𝐻𝐵𝐿oro. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 continues. Namuri sighs. It's hard. It's you talk with the kid, it won't be as hard. He has his own personality, hobbies, and mindset. Just because he looks like him and has his quirk doesn't mean they're identical. Hisashi nods at 𝐻𝐮𝐴's statement. Yeah. He can actually focus on stuff, that's one thing that's different. He laughs. Namuri sighs. I guess. He'll think about it. If you do not pass your final exam, you won't be attending camp, so try your hardest. I was right. The teachers in front of the class looked over at Izuku and Monoma with a questioning expression. Oh, he thought it would be teachers. With the help of me. 𝐻𝐻𝐿 explains with a small smile. 𝐻𝐻𝐿 lets out a chuckle. Smart as ever, Midoriya. Now, time to pair you all up. The small principal cheers, sliding its way down from Izuku's scarf. First, against Izuku are Todoroki Shuto and Yaoyorozu Momo. Next up, Snipe. The students who will go against him are Hitoshi Shinso and Minoma Nito. For Midnight will be Kota Koji and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Ectoplasm will be against Azuitsu and Tokoyami Fumikichi. The principal continued to talk, and Izuku tuned it out until his name was called. Finally, Present Mic versus 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 and Midoriya Izuku. Izuku noticed that 𝐻𝐻𝐿 hesitated before calling his name. The principal continued to explain what would happen, and said all the battles would be going on at the same time. If a team finished early, they were free to watch the others' battles if there were more going on. While the principal did this, Izuku started to list off all present mix weaknesses in his head, making a cloud and shoving his hand in it to grab his notebook. Oh. And Midoriya, try to go easy on him. Izuku looked up and tilted his head as he flipped to the present mic page of one of his notebooks. The explanation soon ended, and everyone was led to a bus each so they could reach their destination. Apparently the 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 they'd be going to is far, so Izuku assumed it would be somewhere present mic had a weakness. Izuku sat down next to the blonde, reading over his notes on the pro hero. Midoriya, what have you written down in there anyways? The pro asks as 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 sat down next to Izuku. Oh, whatever I got to see about pros, I guess. You have entomophobia, right? The fear of bugs. I remember once when I was 7 there was a news channel recording a battle, and you wouldn't go anywhere near bugs, especially spiders. Izuku says he may as well get some information now. WL, bugs and arachnids are creepy. You can't blame me. The pro pouts. The two teenagers laugh as he turtled into his directional speaker with a small, embarrassed blush. Good point. You don't need to be embarrassed, Mike-sensei, it's reasonable. 𝐻𝐿 heard you had seizures when you talk many bugs. Izuku mumbles. I did, and it was a horrible time. Don't you dare find some way to get bugs on me. The pro lightly glares and Izuku laughs. I doubt we can. Anyhow, I'm going to nap before we get to the area. Midoriya, you can plan if you want. Izuku nods, and 𝐀𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 shifts a bit to GT comfortable. She closes her eyes after a bit and Izuku turns back to Mike. Anyways, you can read through the journal if you want, it's just some analysis 𝐻𝐿 done. It wouldn't hurt to let you. Izuku smiles, handing his hero analysis journal to Mike, who flipped through some pages before going back to his. I didn't expect your analysis to be so good when you have time to explain everything. You're right, I can't stand bugs and I am deaf. It's easy to see, actually. Izuku reached up and pulled Mick's headphones off. You got hearing aids, just like 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Your headphones are thick, but if you look close enough you can see there is something under it. It's also pretty obvious. Quirks have effects on the holders, and your ears most likely can't stand the volume of your voice, like 𝐀𝐮𝐿's ears can't stand his explosions. I'm guessing you deafened yourself when you were in UE. It's impossible to do it as a baby because babies' bones are softer, and I wouldn't be surprised if you went past your limits when you were a teenager. Also, 𝐀𝐮𝐿 showed me some pictures when I was at the internship. Izuku rambles. Mike blinked for a moment. Yeah, actually. I was in my second year when I deafened myself, but 𝐻𝐿 had problems with hearing for longer. I just thought it was what everybody heard for a while. And 𝐀𝐮𝐿. Izuku laughs and replies. Yep, 𝐀𝐮𝐿, you should know he would tell me at some point. As long as I don't call him 𝐀𝐮𝐿 when everybody can hear me, then it's fine. Mike smiles. You can call me by my name too if you want. To be honest, it's strange since you resemble my uncle. That's understandable. When that all started, I almost made Mom think I was him. And your name is Yamada Hisashi, right? Yes. Hisashi laughs at the other bit. It nods. Yep, that's me. Izuku smiles. Your first name means sunlight, that's nice. Hisashi nods. Yep. Don't tell anybody, but 𝐀𝐮𝐿 would call me sunlight or sunshine a lot, and not just to get my attention. Izuku laughs. Is that why there's a double bed in his room at his apartment? Are you two married? Yep. I was busy though, so I couldn't really be there when you were awake or just there. Hizashi childishly pouts. Izuku nods with a laugh. Hizashi, Midnight Sensei was one of your friends in Shoal too, right? The blonde nods. Is there any reason she hasn't talked to me yet like you or 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫? Hizashi sighs and nods again. Yep. Sho and I talked to her about it, and she says it's just hard to look at you when you resemble a dead friend. Izuku nods, expecting some sort of answer like that. Before he could as anything else, the bus stopped. Hizashi smiles. Good luck beating me, I doubt he'll win to be honest. He passes Izuku back his hero analysis journal and shook Kyoka for a second, then left the bus. Come on, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, we're here. Izuku smiles and picks her up. She started to move a bit, and got up when she noticed she was being carried after a bit. She mumbles a quiet thanks and walked next to Izuku to the entrance. The two talked with each other for a plan while they were waiting for the exam to start. Once it did, they were greeted by yelling. The exam started. Kyoka winces and allows Izuku to make clouds around her ears and earphone jacks to muffle the noise a bit. The two walked in and looked around. A forest full of bugs. I guess they were originally going to put me with somebody else and not with present Mike. Kyoka nods. This will make this a bit harder, but that's fine. You party poopers. Izuku squeaks and held his ears. So, since I'm a close distance fighter, I'm guessing they put me with Mike because he's a long distance fighter. If we can muffle his voice I can get close enough to attack him, and you can use your heartbeat to dash. Come on. Aren't you going to start attacking? Izuku tried to muffle the voice even more. Kyoka had understood what he was saying and just nodded. Can't you make clouds wherever you want? I need to see the place though and get a bit close since it relies on taking the moisture from a certain part of air. I've learnt I can change the weather on them too, so maybe we can use that to our advantage. Todoroki Shuto and Yaoyorozu Momo have passed the exam. Maybe dash, I'm getting bored. Shut up you oversized bird. Kyoka snorts at what Izuku screamed back, and heard a similar noise from far away. You're mean. Yes, I know that. Izuku turns back to Kyoka. Now, what were you saying? Maybe we can make his directional speaker malfunction by getting water dash. No, too risky, it might electrocute him. But if I'm careful I can get it wet and not hit the speakers or wires to detract him. Kairoka nods. Good plan. Anyways, now dash, hurry ye. Izuku's eyes widen, not having his ears covered at that moment. He didn't want to overuse his quirk and had a plan including a large cloud. He felt a pain in his ears and squeaks. Midoriya. Kyoka panics a bit but calmed down after a bit. Let's just get on with this shitty plan. Ida Tenya and Ojiro Mashireo have passed the exam. Azuitsuyu and Tokoyami Fumikage have passed the exam. Izuku made a small amount of thick clouds to sever his ears, which were badly bleeding. The two then start to put their plan into action, only to realize it could fail easily. Izuku started collecting bugs to put in the cloud for a short time, and only started with the plan when they had enough. Around what Izuku would assume. 60 or so bugs were in there, and a few non-deadly spiders hung around the top of the cloud. Time is almost up. Izuku frowns at the lie and just starts the plan. Mike seemed to notice the cloud creeping behind him and stepped back from it, to be confused when it floated above him. Izuku got rid of the cloud and kicked all the bugs and arachnids out of it. They heard a girly screech and decided to look at the result. I guess we didn't need my quirk after all. Izuku walked up to his sensei and handcuffed him. Mike had bugs and spiders crawling all around him, and he wasn't taking it well. Midoriya, Izuku and Kyoka have passed the exam. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴 and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 have passed the exam. Izuku immediately took the cuffs off and started to get all the bugs and spiders off of Hizashi. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴, can you go and find first aid? He asks as he got all the sutures off. I think my ears are still bleeding. He took the clouds away, to be shocked at the amount of blood he lost. Kyoka ran off to go find the first aid in the bus as Izuku pulled Hizashi up and led him to the same location. Holy CRP, I didn't mean to be so loud. Your ears are covered with Izuku winced at a loud noise in his ear. Stop shouting, Jiru, and I have already passed. I'm not shouting. I must have done something to your ears, like minor deafness. Hizashi replied. Izuku sighs and nods. We can talk to Recovery Girl about it, and hope she can do something. Hizashi Yamada. Izuku let out a small giggle as Ji saw Hizashi get whacked over the head by Recovery Girl's cane. If you were any louder, he would be as deaf as you. She exaggerates. Izuku rolls his eyes. I'm serious. It's pure luck you aren't deaf like him, but you will have trouble hearing. Recovery Girl sighs. Tomorrow we can go get him checked over again, and get him a trial for hearing aids. Inko won't mind if I bring him out for a bit. Hizashi squeaks. Call her, and make sure to mention you almost deafened her son. Recovery Girl glares a bit at Hizashi, then turns to Izuku. I know Japanese sign language. Don't worry, at least I know a way to communicate if I did go fully deaf. Yes, at least. Please don't be so loud next time, Izuku sighs, following Hizashi around a clinic of some sort. Don't worry, I won't. I almost deaf-end you, and I don't want to do anything like that to a student again. The exam day had passed, and it's currently the weekend. Hizashi had already booked everything required to get hearing aids, and after a few days he would be allowed to get his own after a trial to see if it fits and works. Hizashi currently was in his civilian persona, and drew little attention somehow. Why did I even get put with you? Oh, your classmates were all paired already. You were going to be against All Might, but it was too risky, since you don't have a fighting-based quirk and would just use your strength, so you and another two got swapped over. The blonde explains, walking to a door and knocking on it. He led Izuku in after the door was opened and sat down, pulling Izuku with him. So, who is it today? A white-haired woman asks, turning to them with a soft smile. She seemed around 20, and Izuku assumed the hair color is related to her quirk. Izuku, I accidentally gave him a bit of deafness. A bit? You need to speak up so I can hear you. Izuku deadpants. Good point, but still. The doctor laughs and turns to her computer. Okay, let's see through Yamada's first. Complete deafness related to your quirk, and you're nearsighted. But I don't need to talk about that. She mumbles. Remember, you need to book another appointment for you soon, to check if anything happened to your hearing aids. The blonde nods. Anyhow, Midoriya Izuku, correct? She asks in a loud voice. Izuku nods. She grabs something and walks over, gently keeping it in Izuku's ear to look through. You busted his eardrums, not as bad as it could be though. We have everything we need already set up, since it's caused by a quirk it's easier to figure out everything. She took the object out and places it on a table. My quirk allows to analyze medical issues, and if you don't mind I need to use it on you. Izuku nods for her to continue. She smiles, and her hands glow a midnight blue. Okay, I think I know what we should start out with. Tell me what is best and I can give you a week trial. A week? Hizashi questions. Yes, a week. I've heard you UE students are going off to a camp when the new term starts, so we can shorten it down to a week. Remember, hearing aids are not waterproof. If you want to swim, then you'll need to take them out or get them waterproofed here. We got a quirk for that. It permanently makes it waterproof. Yep. Mine are, and it's great. You really want one to swim deaf. Hizashi smiles at Izuku, who nods. How long will this take anyways? Izuku sighed, looking down at the kittens tugging on his breathes. The two meowed and tried climbing up his breathes. He picked them up in his arms, taking out his phone. Cloudy, guess who's coming with me today? Eraser, the kittens. Eraser, bring them food if you are bringing them in Cloudy, bingo. Don't worry, I'm bringing food. Izuku walked around and grabbed some cat food, shoving it in his pocket with his phone, then went out to get to school. He wandered to the nearby bullet train station. When he found the cats, they were closed, but he did usually go that way to school since it's pretty far. He took off his bag and opened it, making a small cloud inside to put the cats on. He left his bag a bit unzipped when he put it back on, with the kittens inside. The ride took a few minutes, but eventually he had gotten off and started to walk the short distance to U. He took the cats out when he was on school grounds, getting rid of the cloud and zipping his bag up once the kittens were safely held in his arms. Izuku made his way to his class, a bit nervous on what his results are with the exam, due to there also being a written portion. Unlike some others, he decided to study by himself, while others went either Yaoyorozu or Ida. He didn't want to rely on others' help with it. During the written portion, he saw a lot of the more dumb classmates actually answering all the questions, so he assumed everybody would pass that part if they could answer all those questions. Izuku turned up to his class at his usual time, 5 minutes early. Usually Ida would tell him to be earlier, but he stopped after realizing it wouldn't work. Everybody felt how hot Izuku's clouds are, and he'd usually sleep on either a cloud or hammock in his room. Midoriya. Kyoka smiles. How's your ears? She asks. Izuku shrugs and decides to reply verbally as well. My ears are okay, but am mostly deaf like 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 now. I'm on my trial for hearing aids. He points to the object over and behind his ear. She nods. Thanks for protecting my ears, by the way. Mike-sensei was loud. He didn't mean to be too loud, he just got excited he was winning. He explains. Kyoka nods and turns back to who she was talking to before. Izuku looks down at the kittens in his arms and makes his way over to his seat, setting them on a cloud on his desk. They meowed and started to reach for Izuku's face, standing up on their back legs to try get some hair that fell down a bit. Deku. Izuku turned and saw Katsuki with his eyes wide. Are your ears okay? He asks, looking over them. My ears are fine, I just have hearing loss. Can we match? Katsuki sighs. Trial PRD. Trial PRD. Get your own waterproofed. I will. The door slid back open and the class quieted, walking around to sit down in their assigned seats. Izuku looked over at the door and saw Aizawa-sensei with some papers in his hands. The cats meowed, wanting to climb him up sleep in his scarf. Izuku sighs and directs the cloud over to him, which he got rid of once they were gone from it. The cats jumped on the man and claimed his capture scarf to sleep in. Aizawa didn't seem to mind and walked up to the podium to announce the results. Congratulations, all of you passed the written portion, surprisingly. Kaminari, Siro, and Mina groaned at the comment, which was mostly obviously directed at them. Some others lightly giggled at the comment, and the fact it was easy to see cats nuzzling his scarf. Now I have some comments. Not all of you passed the physical portion, so you'll be getting more criticism than others. Firstly, Midoriya, what was going in your head when you didn't cover your own ears? I didn't want to get sick. Whatever, anyways, Ashido and Kaminari. The teacher continued on, giving constructive criticism a little too harshly. Congratulations, you are all going to camp. The teacher ended, an uncomforting smile across his face. The class shrieked at the reveal. The summer camp is the training camp. It makes sense. Izuku calls out. The class turned to him. Those who hadn't passed obviously need more training than whoever did. It would be illogical if they don't get trained. I'm guessing there are some special classes though. Aizawa-sensei nods. Yep. All who hadn't passed. He looks over to a group of students. Will be doing remedial classes with me, from 7 in the afternoon to 2 in the morning. The grin widened while some students' eyes widen. You're cruel. Izuku comments. I know that. Hey, we should go to the mall at the weekend. We can get our camp stuff over there. Mina yells out to the class with a wide smile. The majority of the class agrees. Some others need a bit of convincing, but they ended up with 15 of them going. Some others, like Todoroki, have family issues, or something already planned for the weekend. Izuku decided to go. Where should we go first? Achiko asks, looking over at her friends. Izuku shrugs. I'm probably going to the clothes store, pharmacy, then food court. Pharmacy. Achiko. Izuku stared until Achiko realized what he had to get. Oh, I'll come, I don't want to rely on you getting me those strips. She smiles, Izuku returns one back. Sure, let's go to get some clothes first, I'll get you some stuff. You said you were on a tight budget and you look like you're uncomfortable in those clothes. He motions towards the clothes she currently wore. Achiko blushes in embarrassment. You don't need to. But I want to. Izuku replies. Hey Tenya, wanna come along? He looks over at his dark-haired friend, who smiled at them. Sure, but I need to get Tensei another first aid kit in case he gets hurt while out again. Izuku nods. He really needs to be careful. The trio walks off, first to a clothing store. Izuku was pleased to find his favorite, sleeveless hoodies. Hey Achiko, want to get one? He asks, taking a peach fading to purple-styled one, with bunny ears and tail sewn on it of course. She smiles. You really don't dash. Do you want one? Tenya repeats. Achiko sighs, knowing her friends won't give up. Yes please. Izuku nods and threw it over his shoulder, having a feeling it would fit her. He grabbed another, with a orange and black fox design. He saw Tenya choose one of his own, a wolf one with a tail that would drag like the fox one. Izuku grabbed a purple cat one that he had a feeling would fit Hitoshi, while Achiko picked one black and white bear one for Todoroki, who Izuku still wasn't sure if he was in the friend group or not dash. Izuku glanced at it and noticed it was Danganronpa merchandise, an old, but still famous, horror game. The group wandered around, picking out shorts, hoodies, caps, and shirts. Tenya offered to pay. Tenya, you don't need to. I'm rich, Izuku, I want to get rid of some money by buying stuff for my friends. Tenya smiles. Fine, but I'm paying for my fox hoodie. The group paid for the clothes and wandered off. Izuku had immediately thrown his hoodie on, which the other two chuckled at. The next stop was the pharmacy, and Izuku took a bit, before finding the strips he needed. Well, he didn't need them, but they got rid of a bit of nausea. He had his custom ordered. He wandered up to the counter and Tei placed their items on the counter. Oh, before I forget, I have an ordered box of strips to match my quirk, under the name of Izuku Midoriya. The lady at the front nodded and wandered to the back room. Hey, Izuku. Izuku turned to his friends. Yeah. He asks with a small smile. Why does your quirk give you that sickness thing anyways? Achiko asks. I've already explained mine. Oh. It's because of the amount of air in my body, and due to the fact I take moisture from the air dash. Izuku continues with an explanation while the lady took out his order. Soon she came out, and the trio started paying for their items. Off to the food court. Izuku laughs, leading the group to the food court. The two others laugh along with him and follow. The group separate to get their food. Izuku turns to a shop and starts ordering. He pays and started to sip on his raspberry slushie with his curry in his hand. Izuku jumped a bit when he felt a hand around his neck, but kept his mouth shut and expression blank. Oh, you're that kid from the announcer's booth, in the sports festival. A hero course student, right? Can I get an autograph? Shigaraki, you should know I wouldn't give out my autograph to. He glances around. An old friend. That's right, I'm an old friend. Don't break character, or you'll feel your neck decay. Izuku spotted his class at a table, and sent a panicked look at anyone who looked his way. Of course. Tenko. He nods, saying the first name to come to mind. Shigaraki's fingers twitched. Now, I want you to talk to me like a good friend, not like someone you just met. Izuku nods. Now, down to business. The dusty-haired villain started to talk about stain, quirks, and his hate for heroes. Izuku itched to grab his phone, but decided not to. Izuku answered any questions as truthful as possible, thankfully being saved after a bit by Minoma. Oh, hey Deku. The blonde smiles, walking over. Who's this? Oh, dear Midoriya and I are old friends. Minoma put his hand behind his back. Midoriya, must be before you got all your friends to call you Deku. He says. Minoma glances over and saw Shigaraki panic a bit. Oh, yes, I met him when he was. What? Thanks for the intel. Now, go over to that nice mall officer over there and admit you're Tamura Shigaraki, the villain who led the USJ attack. Minoma smiles wider, and Shigaraki froze, taking his hand from Izuku, then wandered off. Minoma. Thank you. Izuku smiles, thankful he took a risk and also copied Hitoshi's quirk. Also, how'd you know? He was a villain. Or didn't know you. You looked uncomfortable and seemed to shift around a bit. His hand was around your neck like it was something to do with his quirk, like a 5-finger touch quirk. The blonde explains. Oh, and call me Nito,